back to another episode of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. We've got the usual crew here today. I'm your host. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me, we have Josh Torres.
Sad to confirm that I will not be returning as shop attendant Jay in the Persona 4 remake.
We have Mikhail Mednani.
Hello.
Adam Vitale.
Why is it called the Tetracast when we have 6 people?
Great question. We have James Galizio.
Hey, folks.
And Chao Minwoo.
It could be the Hexacast from now on.
We'll just change the title based on the week, depending on who's here.
Yeah,
next week will be
for
the
people to find us. Yeah,
if we even get
our
three people on
podcast
next week.
That'll be me, Chao, and Mikhail, hopefully, but we'll see. Yeah, talking about next week, of course. Next week is Summer Games Fest, and Josh, James, Adam will all be there, as well as a few others that contribute to our site. So we're expecting a lot of news. Of course, they have the Switch 2 right on top of that. It'll be a very busy week. And looking at our outline for this week's podcast, it's already kind of a very busy week. A lot of people kind of releasing information ahead of Summer Games Fest. A lot of current games that have been releasing. Obviously, we had the dual release of 2 games in the last week with Elden Ring Night Rain and Fuga Melodies of Steel 3. And we're going to talk about both those games this week, of course. But we're actually going to put our starting focus on Fuga Melodies of Steel 3. We've got 2 people here that have played it, Adam and James. Elden Ring, we do have a review up on the site. Scott wrote a review for us, and then Mikhail did write a feature for us about the Steam Deck and ROG Ally performance on that, as well as a couple guides. So Elden Ring Night Rain obviously did release, but we're going to kind of put our primary talk on that to a later podcast. We'll talk about the review and some of the features we have. But in our starting section here, we're going to focus first on Fuga Melodies of Steel 3, and then we've got a lot of other games to talk about as well. A lot of game updates. James had a few more previews, kind of dovetailing from last week that he was able to talk about as the embargo is released.
It's finally over.
In the last 7 days. Yeah. So we'll kind of put a pin in that. And then, of course, we've got a lot of sales updates, actually. A lot of games hitting some pretty major milestones. But without further ado, we're going to start out with Fuga Melodies of Steel 3. I'll start out with Adam first, but I know that James has also played it, and I'm not sure if anyone else has. But we'll kind of take it from there, and then we'll bounce through the rest of the games and into the features.
Yeah, I'll let Adam start, because you've actually gotten all the endings, right?
Yes, I've gotten the true ending and everything. So,
Yeah.
How do I put this? So, Fuga Melodies of Steel, if you're not familiar with it, it's a tactical RPG, turn-based RPG, and the first game came out in 2021, the second game came out in 2023, and this is the third game and the final game in the series. It's a tactical RPG. If you've seen anything about it, you know it stars anthropomorphic animals like dogs and cats, and they are children. They are in a giant tank, like kind of like a World War II-ish, Valkyria Chronicles-ish type of tank called the Tyrannus. And you basically have the children in the tank. It goes along a path, a linear path. You don't actually control the tank. It kind of goes along this path, and at certain nodes on the path, you're going to run into various enemies that you fight, and other different events that can happen on the path. And basically what the gameplay is, it's this tactical RPG is the best way to describe it, but not really like a grid system tactical RPG that you might be thinking of. It's more like you have up to, I think, 12 different characters. They use different weapons. They have different abilities. You can use 3 at a time, and they all have kind of different types of things they can do, and 3 different types of weapons spread out among those characters. And then basically, when you see the enemies that you're about to face at each node on the path, you're basically in real time in a turn-based system deciding, okay, what's the best way to take out these enemies as efficiently as possible with which characters, which abilities, to hit the right weaknesses, and basically to move on to the next enemy in the path. And very basically, that is kind of the combat for all 3 of these games. They share very similar mechanics.
maybe shares too much with each other.
Yeah, so they are very iterative sequels. We said that about the second one when it released 2 years ago, and this one is similar in that regard.
Yeah, I was really hoping that I guess just diving straight in, I was really hoping that the combo system was going to be a much bigger change, along with I thought that the way that you progress through each stage was going to be different because they're like, oh, there's all these different endings. So it's like, oh, so there's going to be choices, right? No, it's
Yeah.
just, it, yeah, game's still good, but definitely a case where it's like, also, I don't know if it's just me, but it's like, man, they just treat Fuga 2's story as complete filler. Like, it might as well have not have happened.
I agree. It kind of feels like it doesn't matter. There are parts of it that do come into play like around the end, but they didn't even like you could have easily written around that. Like
Yeah.
it is an iterative sequel. Both of these are 2 and 3. And I do think that is to its detriment. Like if you haven't played these games and you want to play them like in sequence, like, oh, let me just start at the first one and go to the second one, go to the third one, you're probably going to burn out because they're very, very similar to each other. James and I playing these as they launch, we get, 2-year breaks or whatever. But going from one to the next, they are very similar. So James mentioned it
Also,
briefly. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, considering how little relevance Fuga 2 has, I might actually recommend people just like read a summary and just skip right from 1 to 3, because you literally don't lose anything besides knowing who Vanilla is, and you can just read a summary to figure that out. That's it. It's like,
Yeah.
That doesn't feel great. Just hearing that from both of you, just like it's like the second game in the series of this trilogy, just like doesn't feel like it matters. Kind of.
No, it
yeah, and it
doesn't.
sucks. It's not like the games, like any of the games are bad, but it's like when they're all so iterative, it's like, man, just. I am enjoying it. I am almost done. I've just been super busy with other stuff and juggling both the preview stuff and also, I guess I'm our main 14 coverage guy, so I'm trying to make sure I can get through the new content there too. Fuga 3 is good. Besides the like iterative complaints, I will also say that, and I thought it was just me. I thought I was just like reading into things, but then I saw like a review on the Steam page that had the same concern that they were saying, "Hey, it feels like the translation this time is a lot stiffer." And I was like, "Oh, so it wasn't just me that felt that way." I don't know why it is, but yeah.
Yeah, I kind of felt that too. It's not like indecipherable, but it just kind of feels a little bit like
Yeah.
Weird. So in terms of new mechanics, now this is where I actually have to like remind myself, like, what exactly is new from the second game and what's
Yeah, that's the same thing.
Oh, well, so the combo system is new, and I do think the combo system is an improvement. Overall. So basically, how all of these games work is there's 3 different types of weapons. To make it simple, there's red, blue, and yellow weapons. And when you reach an enemy on the node on the path, it'll actually have like a little icon that basically says they're weak to yellow. And if you hit that icon with a yellow weapon, you basically you may do extra damage, I don't remember, but mainly you can delay their turn, which in this sort of game, the way this is set up on a kind of this tactical timeline, that's very, very crucial that you delay the enemies as much as possible. So basically, when you're playing these games, you're switching out your characters and their weapons as whenever you can to basically hit weaknesses whenever you can to delay the enemies as much as possible. That's kind of the gameplay of these. But now there's a new combo system where as you hit weaknesses in a row, you activate like a damage multiplier. So you hit one weakness and you basically do like 120% damage, and another weakness it goes up to 140, and then up to 160, then up to 180. But if you miss a weakness, or if you didn't line up your attacks right away or properly, then your multiplier goes back down to nothing, right? So there's this incentive to not only think about your current turn, but to think about the upcoming turns to try to basically chain together hitting as many weaknesses in a row as possible. And I think this is an improvement. It gives you more reason to, think strategically about like, who do I want to bring out? What order do I want to bring out like my characters in, and which enemy should I attack first? Which enemy should I attack second? And based on their weaknesses that are available to me. So I think that is an improvement. James mentioned that it maybe wasn't as involved as he was expecting, and I kind of agree with him on that front. But it's still, I think, an improvement to kind of it's another spinning plate in the game to keep track of.
Well, here's, I guess, the first point where we diverge. The more I think about it, the more I think I actually dislike the combo system, because it before, the thing I liked about the game is that all the different features, it felt like they worked together. But there's some elements of the combat system from previous games that return here that literally, the combo system works against. It doesn't fit in nicely. Like, if Boron goes hero mode and you want to use him because let's say if you get rid of weaknesses early on, then you're kind of punished for doing so. I feel like if you attack an enemy that doesn't have any weakness icons, you should just still get a free combo from that attack. Instead, you have to hope that one of your units gets their hero mode that lets them combo off of regular attacks, or you hope that they get their action that reveals new weaknesses. And that doesn't necessarily feel great when it's you're doing well and your reward for doing well is, hey, maybe one of your characters you want to take advantage of one of your character's abilities that scales off of how high the combo rate is. But the problem is that if you want to do that, you can't stall for time. You need to keep the combo going, and it just doesn't feel good. It just doesn't feel good, in my opinion.
I think sometimes it doesn't work your way. If I got unlucky in terms of when a character goes into hero mode, or when if there are no enemy weaknesses available anymore, and at that point it's just okay, that's the card you're dealt, do the strongest attack you can and then start your combo over. That's what you have to do.
So it's not really a problem for me in regular battles, but because of the way that the forcing kids into the soul cannon works in boss fights, it just doesn't feel good, because you hit half health, and even if you heal up, it's okay, the countdown begins, kill the enemy in time. And it's just, some of the bosses, especially later on, they get so much armor and they have so many different, I don't know.
I do feel like in this game, the way so James mentioned this, in this game, one of the new mechanics in the game, again in boss fights, is that you reach a countdown where if you hit a certain HP threshold yourself, you're the Tyrannus, a character will basically start a countdown that you have to basically defeat the boss.
That's not new.
Wait,
that's not new. That was in the second one, but in the second one you had the diet soul cannon that just knocked a character out that you could use if you really weren't able to otherwise get there in time.
Oh, I remember this now.
Yeah, and if that diet soul cannon was still there, it would be one thing, but having the limitation and with how strict it just doesn't feel very good. It just doesn't feel very good, because it's if you're gonna force me into that thing, you can't make it so I can pause or stop the countdown by healing things up. Diegetically, that doesn't feel good, because the whole reason that they're thinking they need to go in there is oh man, we're gonna lose. But if I can just heal up, it's no, I'm not. There should be some way of if I'm playing defensively, which realistically, I don't know. I was fine with it in Fuga 2 because they had the Diet Soul Cannon, because it felt like that was their direct response, being hey, we know that this adds more tension, but if worse comes to worst, you can take the lesser of two evils option here. And because that isn't here now, it just doesn't feel good. And it feels like they designed it that way, knowing that they were going to have all these different bad endings. So it's okay, just wait until your second playthrough when you're going to be overpowered, so it doesn't even matter. You're only going to have this be a problem on the first playthrough when it's not going to feel good.
So I don't like or really dislike this soul cannon mechanic, the slight tweaks to it. Basically, how I saw it, and I don't know if this is really that interesting or not, I just kind of felt like it's whatever, is okay, in this boss fight, for example, there's a boss fight coming, there's around chapter 6, I think, where you start at 70% health, you're pretty easily going to go down to 50% health, and it basically kind of forces you into this countdown pretty early on. There were a few fights in the game where I was just like, honestly, screw it. I'm just going to throw someone in the soul cannon, shoot them, and I'll come back to them later when I can jump through time. And that's what it is. And you kind of mentioned that. So, like, sorry, Hannah, you're dead now, but we'll come back for you later. And that's just, it feels like the game is actually, that's pretty much what it's designed for.
Yeah.
So
I get that. It's just like,
no, I think I agree with you here. It's just, it's kind of a weird, just kind of like, yeah, it's basically forcing you to kill someone here. I'm not saying you absolutely have to. I'm sure you can play around it, but it's basically saying on your first playthrough, you're expected to lose someone here.
It also feels like there's like a bit of a difficulty spike in like chapter 7 with the regular enemies.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a mode that they added to not only this game, but like a mode that they backported the previous games where you could just
Fast
skip
mode,
the fights and almost like a story mode. Yeah, fast mode.
That feels like almost directly because of how this game is designed. They want you to be able to catch up to where you were before someone died, I guess. At least that's the feeling I get.
Is it not a mode that you select at the start? It's
you can change to it whenever.
Yeah,
Okay.
effectively you can just change it.
It lets you use this bomb, which is like a one-hit kill for every battle, essentially, from what I could tell.
Yeah.
For bosses.
I just tried it a bit in Fuga too.
In terms of the game itself, how do I put this? This game's story stuff gets pretty weird.
Yeah.
Kind of in a weird, like, stakes are higher, the scope is bigger, kind of anime bullshitty. And at some point, I'm just kind of like, yeah, whatever, Fuga, do what you want. There's a reason why the key art shows Malt, the main character, like in space, looking over the world. Like, okay.
Do you think that it scales up like to the point that like from where it started in Fuga 1 and how it progressed throughout the series? Do you think that it just like kind of got away from like the spirit of what you wanted in the first place?
Yeah, I think
it kind of. I kind of lost interest. It just kind of got a little bit too crazy and insane and stupid.
Yeah,
honestly,
even as someone that's a fan of Little Tail Bronx and knows the lore, if anything, like they showed everything they needed to with Fuga 1, like tying into like you could just completely ignore Fuga 2 and 3, and you would completely understand how you got from Fuga 1 to Soul Throbo. Completely. But yeah, I still like Fuga 3. I definitely think that it's probably my least favorite of the trilogy, but that might just be because of the fact that it might be on paper the best game, but because of how like iterative it is compared to 1 and 2 and some of the pacing issues, I feel like I don't know. I do like the assist things. I think the assist attacks are new.
Yeah. Personally, I think the assist attacks and the combo system, those two things, for me, I think they make it the best game, like pure mechanics that in the series that I like. And I think I even said this about 2, is I think 2 is a stronger game than 1 on paper. But if you're going from 1 to 2 to 3, just these small adjustments each step is kind of, they're not big enough.
And that's the real reason why I'm saying, like, if someone's going to get into the series from now on, I'm going to tell them just skip 2, because it's like there's nothing in the story you get, and you're just going to burn yourself out with 3. So
it's also just weird that remember when they first announced Fuga, it was like also with like 2 other brand new IP projects.
They said that they're working on Cecile as the next game.
Yeah, but it's just weird for me that like they decided to make a trilogy of Fuga games before doing anything else out of those. Like I feel like it would have been nice to split up that schedule, because I
you know what I think? You know what I think?
Mm-hmm.
They probably made a trilogy because they're reusing so many assets from the first and second game that they were able to probably have a relative skeleton crew on the sequels while working on other projects, so they can get these out, get money from it, but they also can have other people on their projects that actually make money. So
yeah, I guess
maybe that's me being a bit too pessimistic or too cynical, but that's the vibe that I kind of get.
Yeah, it's just I feel it's harsh for CyberConnect too, because it's definitely they're very ambitious right now, even though they're way smaller in scale and like manpower. They're developing and publishing these for so many systems simultaneously worldwide. And the thing that really keeps them afloat is these license projects like that upcoming sequel to the Demon Slayer fighting game. Um, that is just like it's definitely a passion project, but I wish they found a better way to pace these out because I think this Fuga project that they're on would have worked way better if they kind of gave it a bit more breathing room in between releases instead of just like
Yeah.
this incessant need to finish this trilogy before getting on to the next parts. And Mikhail, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so there's one thing I noticed that when they launched Fuga Melodies of Steel, the first one, I had a lot of friends who gave it a shot. In fact, I bought it without even thinking because I think James was talking about it a lot pre-release, so I gave it a shot at that time and I liked it. What's happened since then, which I don't see a lot of people talk about, is they've just completely abandoned regional pricing on Steam in a lot of places. And because
Oh,
of that, Fuga 2 and 3 have become like 3 or 4 times the price of what Fuga 1 was, and they've also raised
ooh,
the price for that. And the problem is like, a lot of developers, when they have sequels and a lot of DLC, they usually do like discounted bundles. If you own the previous game, you get a discount on the next one. Or if you like buy the standard edition, you get a discount to upgrade to like the ultimate. Because these games, obviously, you just need the standard edition, but they also have like a deluxe upgrade, which gives you soundtrack and art book. And they've started doing like collabs like the Solato Robo, Red the Hunter thing, which they released with Fuga 3. So usually on Steam, at least you have like a complete your bundle thing, which gives you like 5 or 10% off. But for this, they do a complete your bundle with 0% discount, and I feel like they should probably either get some consultation on how to handle this on PC at least, or just have it as normal DLC because it feels like they're doing a lot right with worldwide simultaneous multi-platform releases like day one and all that. But there's just some things which like kind of is like sticking points where you think, given they've released now 3 games on Steam, they'd know better. At least that's how
Yeah.
I feel.
It's really funny you bring that up because it's like I was thinking about that because this is going to be the one and only fucking time we say something like this on the podcast. Literally in a server that I think both of us are in, the Meta Council
Yeah,
server.
yeah.
Fucking Wario64 was complaining about that. He's in there and he was just like, why are they not doing discounts on this? What's their fucking problem?
Yeah, I think that's when I noticed the like I got a review code for Fuga 3 and I was like, usually when that happens, I'm like, okay, I'll pick up the DLC. It's like no discount, so I can just buy it later. I don't need to get it now. Like NIS America usually has these launch bundles where like you get a 10% or 15% extra thing if you buy it in the first week. So usually upgrading it makes sense now because they don't do discounts that often. But for this, it's like they just dumped a lot of DLC on Steam, but there's no discount, so you can just buy it later. And I know I'm like one of those idiots who likes owning all the DLC to specific games, so eventually I'll get it. But yeah, I agree with you. It's like, what are they doing? Why are you doing a
Also,
complete your bundle with 0% discount?
like with Fuga 3, if you get the deluxe edition, that doesn't give you all the DLC from what I can tell. You don't get the Slut Robo stuff. You have to buy
No,
the
no, no.
season pass
Yeah.
separately.
oh my
That's in the
gosh.
Ultimate Edition, which also I think has almost no discount. So, like, if you buy the Standard Edition and buy the DLC separately, or if you buy the Ultimate Edition, you're not saving much. Like, this is the stuff that you'd expect on someone's first release, but I'm just surprised to see it now 3 games in a row.
Yeah, I mean that's rough. And like you guys were mentioning earlier, I think what really is working against them is that like I've heard many people like who on my end who played the first one and they liked the first one, then they went into two and they found the two way too samey, but also it drags on for a long time into to the point that it's like a lot of them feel so burnt out that like playing through most of two, I don't think any of them really finished it. It's like I don't want to get three. I just feel so burnt out from two. Like, is there any way you can kind of convince these people to come back for three when they feel so burnt from the gameplay experience of two?
I feel like broadly this trilogy didn't need to be a trilogy. It could have just they maybe could do a sequel with a bigger, adjustments and change. But yeah, this sort of tiny incremental jumps, not once but twice. I do think there are improvements each time, at least in some regards. But exactly as you say, I do not blame people whatsoever if they're getting into 2 and they feel burned out. And if they get into 3, they're probably also going to feel burned out because it's, especially if they're playing them, more back to back at all.
Yeah.
They're very
would have
similar.
been it would have been one thing if there was actual choices like that depended on what you did in the missions that gave you the different endings instead of, hey, fuck up in this one chapter to get a mega soul canon ending.
Yeah.
That's cool, isn't it? It's like, if you're gonna like make a big deal about all the different endings you're gonna get, that leaves a certain expectation. And I know I know that it wasn't just me having the wrong expectation, because when you're marketing on, oh, look, we have the Akashic panel, there's like all the different choices you can make, we have different endings. Anyone that's played games gets a certain idea from that. And when it's just, oh, let a character die, it's like, that's just lame. That's just lame.
And also, there's like optional scenes on the panel that you can get to that look like a branching route or something like that. But all
it's just like a 3 or 4 line thing.
Right.
Yeah.
You just click it and it's just like here's a scene elsewhere in the world right now, and you just click it. It's just a pretty quick minute long. Here's what this character thinks in this other part of the world, and then that's it. And then it's not like a route. It's just here's an extra scene here that you can watch if you want. So yeah, it's like one of those things on paper. Like, yes, you have choices, sort of. There are extra endings, yes, but it's very like on paper, and that's about it.
How many endings are there? Are there 100?
8, I think.
I think there's like 5 bad endings, normal ending, like neutral ending, and true ending, I think. So yeah, it's 8.
And then, but if let's say you want to get all these endings, let's say you run into a bad ending, can you go back to exactly where the branching choice was made, or what's that process of chasing through other endings in this?
So how I did it, and I think this is probably not going to be too unusual, is I went through the game and I didn't get any of the bad endings, because you kind of have to like purposely lose to get a bad ending.
Yeah. But I'm guessing you got a normal ending because he did sacrifice.
Yeah, sorry, Hannah. Hannah died, so I didn't get the good ending, or the true ending, or whatever. So I got the normal ending, and then you can basically timeline jump. And you know how, side note, tangent, you know how I was mentioning the story before? There's like literally time travel now, so that's kind of
I was going to ask.
Yeah, you can literally time travel to jump through time. So
I was gonna ask if the time travel was just like it's just in the game you choose a different option, or is it literally like bespoke? No, that's not the right term. Like diegetic, I guess.
the actual characters in the story, well, it's not really like it's time travel, timeline stuff. It is in the story now. Like, yes, that's
Gotcha.
it's not just you can jump back in the game. It's literally like part of the game's story.
Which is interesting, because so here's one thing I'm going to talk about, because when they first revealed this game, it was originally a roguelike.
Yes, the original game was. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it seems like they probably had this specific idea for a while, and I think that this framework would have worked better if this was a roguelike and if it was structured more like a roguelike. I think it would have made Fuga 3 a more interesting game, and it would have made it stand out from Fuga 1 and 2. And I think because of what they're trying to tell with the story, it would have fit better. I don't know.
Anyways, back to my original point. So there is timeline jumping, and it is a part of the story. And yes, you can definitely tell that Fuga originally was envisioned as a roguelike, and you can kind of feel that, that inspiration here in some places. But so I got the normal ending, and then it's like, okay, now let me jump back in time to basically get every bad ending I can. And the bad endings are, like James said earlier, you go to a certain boss fight in the game. It's like, if you lose this boss fight in a certain way, you get a bad ending. So there's 5 of them, and it's like, all right, let me just knock them out one by one. Let me get bad ending 1, bad ending 2, bad ending 3, bad ending 4, and so on. And then at that point, like, okay, got all the bad endings. Let me make sure Hannah doesn't die this time, so save her. Then you go back to the end of the game and you can get the true ending, basically. So it's kind of like, get the normal ending, knock out the bad endings, save all your kids, and that allows you to get the true ending.
Yeah. It's not so much replaying the game again. It's like you get one ending, and then most people are probably because it's already repetitive enough. It's not going to be like, okay, time for cleanup duty.
Oh yeah, it's pretty much like cleanup duty. And to answer Brian's question, each chapter in the game, there's like 4 or 5 nodes you can jump to, usually including right at the boss fight. So most of the time you can jump right to a fight where a soul cannon can be used. But otherwise, there's like certain nodes you can jump to, so you're not too far away from any particular point in the game. Not like every single battle, but most of them. So, but yeah, broadly speaking, I don't think this series needed to be a trilogy. I do think on paper, in terms of the pure combat, this is my favorite. I know James disagrees with that slightly, and totally valid. It's definitely just small little tweaks here and there with each game, but not enough. And I don't blame people for burning out or feeling they're too samey. And it's just kind of a weird approach that they took in making this a trilogy. That's what it is.
Thank you, James and Adam, for discussing through Fuga Melodies of Steel 3. And are we going to have a write-up on this, or are we just going to keep it to the podcast?
No, I'm going to write up about it. Just, I'll make sure, probably either tonight or tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah, okay, just curious. We'll point back to it once it's, of course, published. Right, because moving down the list of other games we want to talk about, here's one that we had earmarked for last week, but we just kind of ran out of time. This is Gundam Seed Battle Destiny Remastered. I think I've seen Josh tweeting or skeeting about this, and I think Cullen maybe as well. But I'm not 100% sure what this is, so I'm just going to lead it over to Josh to discuss what is Gundam Seed Battle Destiny Remastered.
Yeah, maybe I posted about it. I got to the credits, but yeah, this is a pretty interesting surprise release from Bandai Namco. They announced it a few months ago, kind of out of nowhere, where they were remastering Gundam Seed Battle Destiny. This originally released only in Japan for the Vita, like at around 2012. So and it's like, oh, this is kind of interesting that they're finally bringing this overseas for the first time, and it's been over 10 years since it's released, like 13 years. Um, and of course, this is probably riding off of the popularity of the Seed Freedom movie that recently came out, and then they also had that Seed Recollection thing that was exclusive to the G Generation Eternal mobile game. So the popularity of Gundam Seed is on the rise again because of the new movie primarily. So this is like kind of a good time to bring this out. Um, the these games have a pretty interesting legacy because this is developed by ArtDink. Um, People will know ArtDink for these days for creating the Dragon Quest 3 and then 1 and 2 HD2D remakes. They were also involved with the SD Gundam Battle Alliance and Soul Hackers 2 and I think Triangle Strategy throughout the recent years. But Arctic, in my mind, really they're an incredible studio that has made a lot of freaking games. They were involved with Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together. And one of the interesting periods in their history is around the late aughts, early tens handheld market, especially for mecha games. So they had stuff like Gundam Battle Universe and Macross Ultimate Frontier for the PSP. These were only released in Japan. They had a few Macross games for PS3 and also Gundam games as well. So they kind of had like a great span of like mecha games, and they were primarily action games, light on RPG elements, but they were a cross between. They weren't too arcadey, but you had enough sort of like light sim elements to kind of put points into upgrading your mech, but they weren't like full on fast action pace like the Extreme Gundam Extreme versus arcade competitive games. So Gundam Seed Battle Destiny is like one of the last ones they did in that handheld mecha era that they went into, and it's a pretty like it was a pretty solid game back in the day. If you were into the Gundam Seed era, Cosmic era type of stuff, and this new release of Battle Destiny Remastered, kind of gives it a fresh coat of paint, and sort of it's largely the same game, but it kind of smoothens out some of like the progression shenanigans. And what I mean by that is, and we're gonna go a little bit into like what Gundam Seed is for people who don't know. Um, when you're starting at the beginning of the game, you kind of make your own create a faceless, create a pilot sort of interface. You give them a name, you assign them skills. You can also do this. You also do the same thing with a co-pilot with you. Faceless sort of co-pilot with you. Give them a name, give them abilities, and you have the option of um, uh, uh, I guess this putting what sort of pilot they are in the Seed universe. So in the Gundam Seed story, in the lore, there are humans that are naturals and there are humans that are coordinators. And coordinators, opposed from like the normal naturals, is that they are humans that have been dwelling and living in space and have sort of developed like I guess a third sense that have accustomed to being in space for so long, so they kind of have heightened abilities. In sort of like they have like more heightened senses because they've been living in space for so long, and such. And this goes into a whole kind of the main thrust of the Seed plot line is this tension between the naturals and the coordinators.
Wait, I blanked
Um,
out for a second. Are these
yes,
different from new types?
Yes.
they are yes, they are different from new types ish. It's because Gundam Seed is sort of almost a modern remake of the original Gundam
Right.
Mobile Suit Gundam, and coordinators are sort of like the new type equivalents.
Just to be clear,
So
I kind of
yeah, yeah,
I don't know a whole lot of Gundam, but I know enough where I'm like, wait, this
yes,
sounds like new types that is from like
yeah.
the original like main
You're
series
not
or
too far
whatever.
off. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But later
So
on, they did add it. Well, there's technically new types in Gundam Seed. There's only
I
one
know.
guy that has it. But later
And
on, they added like a couple guys having it.
yeah, I don't want to get into it because it does get a little messy, but it is basically the new type equivalent to that. So it does the plot does have a lot has a lot of tension between them. So in this game, you choose whether your pilot is a natural or coordinator, and it's funny and kind of interesting in the ways that the gameplay implications of what is what. So if you're a natural, you gain access to all three skill slots, where you have two actives and one passive ability that you can equip normally if you're a natural. If you choose coordinator, one of those active slots is locked to coordinator, and it gives you +9 to all stats as coordinator to show that like, hey, you're a better general pilot and more capable than a natural. And that coordinator thing is only for pilots that are coordinators, not naturals. That also means that certain mobile suits, like say the Strike Freedom or the Legend, like those that use like funnels or dragoon type systems, the little uh, bits that you can fly off of your suit and have like fire off lasers on their own. If you're a natural, I forgot if those are locked or they're way more shitty. I forgot exactly. But if you're
No,
a coordinator, you're better at doing that. In Seed Battle Destiny, that's how they
Mm.
show those. There are stat penalties for being a natural, and you're trying to pilot mobile suits that are more suited for coordinators. In
I was
that
just gonna
game.
say, like, I remember in the Gundam Seed show, like, no one could use those unless they're a new type, technically. You
Yeah,
remember?
yeah.
So,
Like I said, it gets kind of a little bit weird because they're a little bit inconsistent with some of these things on paper. Um, but it's definitely trying to hit like some of that sim aspects and the. I guess we replaying through Seed Battle Destiny Remastered because I played the original on Vita. I digitally imported that to my Vita because I was that dude who had a Japanese PSN account on a separate Vita memory card to import
Yep.
games.
Yep, that's how I
Uh,
got my DLC for EFVT Colorful. I definitely fucking didn't pronounce that right.
yeah. Um, So yeah, so as I'm playing through this game, it really is kind of this lost art in a lot of different ways. In the realm of like Gundam games, you don't really get many new Gundam games anymore that are just on home console. Like some console ports of the Extreme Versus games. We do have Battle Operation 2, which is like a barely barely operational, let's say, in the West. Its peak hours are like when when the Japanese are up and playing it, but not much Western presence on that end. And other than that, we haven't really had any like big gun. I mean, we had Gundam Evolution, I guess, and that everyone remembers how that went. Where kind of died prematurely, I guess. Um, and so in this game, it really forces you to work your way up through the ranks. You're going through the stories of Gundam Seed and Seed Destiny, and you are and they're split off by factions. So in both of those shows, there ends up being three factions by the end. At first, there's the Earth Alliance versus Zaft. Earth Alliance are the naturals. Zaft is the coordinators. And then there's a middle ground that usually the protagonist group forms by like a little bit halfway or a little bit over halfway through those shows, where you eventually uh, in the first Gundam Seed show, they find this third faction called Orb, and it's basically trying to find a middle ground for naturals and coordinators to coexist and try to end the war between them. Trying to find a middle ground because of all the senseless fighting. In Gundam Seed Destiny, um, they like Orb has to. I don't know if they're. I think they're still called Orb in Seed Destiny, but they basically have to reform this third faction because things are heating up again between Earth Alliance and Zaft and Seed Destiny. Different circumstances, but eventually they have to do this third faction stuff again in Seed Destiny. Um, so in the when you're starting out in Battle Destiny, you choose first either do you want to be sided to Earth Alliance or Zaft, and you start from the first Gundam Seed show, and you play through their stages, and your allies will be different, obviously depending on which side you choose, and then after a certain stage, you can actually choose another faction. Do you want to stay with either Earth Alliance or Zaft, or do you want to defect over to the Archangel, which is like the main warship, and then eventually that they form Orb throughout the events of that. So you have a new set of stages if you decide to defect from your starting faction and go over there. And how this was handled in the Vita was a little bit obtuse and strange because let's say I made my characters and my playthrough was in the first Siege show, or I went Earth Alliance and then I've defected over to Orb, and then for Seed Destiny, I I went over to I started as Zaft, and then I decided to stay on Zaft for Seed Destiny for that character. If you wanted to switch factions and play the other routes in that game, you had to make another save slot and choose different factions from that new save slot on Vita, and eventually it would all count towards like a universal pool of like percent, like your gameplay percentage. So it's not like you're totally starting from scratch in terms of overall progress. But either way, you have to make multiple save slots in the Vita version if you wanted to play the other routes in the game. Um, in Battle Destiny Remastered, a lot of that has been really smoothened out, where you are still locked to what routes you choose at your first playthrough, but after you finish a whole entire playthrough of the seed stages and the seed destiny stages, regardless of what route you chose, after you finish like that final story mission, then it'll open up the other route stages. So if I wanted to go back and play the Zaft route, I don't have to make a new save slot. I can just go to over to the tab of Zaft and start that. Um, storyline and not have to like make a new save slot for that. Um, in terms of like also what I was saying in terms of like recent Gundam games, a lot of like Gundam games these days really are main character, main mobile suit focus because they want to give you that power fantasy. Plus, it's like that kind of the poster boy of those shows. Like you're like, let's say in Super Robot Wars, you're never gonna uh like have the Zaku as like your main playable Gundam character. It'll be like, hey, it's gonna be the new Gundam, and it's gonna be the Zazabi. It's never gonna be Char Zaku in it or whatever. And it doesn't really let you play grunts. Their grunts are never really the focus of those. Uh, in Battle Destiny and in the other Arctic Gundam games, they actually, if you so choose, let you play all the grunt units, uh, from those universes. So in the Gundam Seed um shows, you can play as like the Zaku Phantom, or you can play the Strike Dagger, or you can play the Mobius Zero. Like these aren't like the front and center suits. They are kind of like either piloted by side characters or like grunt suits. And when you're starting the game, you are locked to those grunt suits until you beat the main story mission that starts unlocking some of the more recognizable mobile suits in the game. So you are forced to like play that grunt suit life for a bit until you make progress in the main story to unlock them. And you can spend tuning points that you gain throughout the missions to power up their capabilities and make them a little bit stronger. But you know, you are living that grunt suit life of like, hey, I have fairly limited weaponry and very limited like capabilities. It all kind of the success or failure depends on how well I play this mission based on like my ability to do stuff in the mission. Because I am just a lowly grunt suit going up against the main character of or the main villains of the early game or early show of this arc, and they can like 2 to 3 shot me if I'm not paying attention. And this game is pretty unforgiving in terms of like when you think about modern action games and the rules that they operate in. For example, when you are knocked down in an action game, usually there are invincibility frames when you are on the ground up until you're up. Um, and until then, the game will actually, you know, the game is more forgiving about, hey, let the player get up first, so they have a chance to strike back. In games like older games like these, if you are knocked down, the enemies can continue to wail at you when you're on the ground and when you're getting up, and you are just shredding HP, and there's nothing you can do about it because that's the way that these games are designed, where knockdowns are pretty punishing, but it goes both ways. So if you are able to continually knock down your opponent, they'll continue to take damage because you're still wailing at them while they're laying down. Even when they're getting staggered, you can still damage them. There is no like grace period on assault. It really kind of depends on like when the AI decides to let up on you or not. So it kind of
So what you're saying is just don't get knocked down.
don't get knocked down. Don't get
Get
knocked
treated
down.
like
It's
a
it's a bad
ragdoll.
time. Yeah. Um, and it also harkens back to this handheld game design in that era where you there's less of a focus on like these bite-sized game sessions within like game design these days, as ever since Nintendo decided to make a hybrid console with a Switch of like, we're going to combine our handheld and home consoles into one. You know, there's definitely going to be some like most of the games throughout the Switch's lifespan really weren't really that bite-sized in terms of like, hey, this is a game that is divided up into stages. These stages are about like maybe 5 to 10 minutes each. I play through them. I can set it down. I can pick it back up whenever again, and they're very self-contained in those sessions. About whenever you play like a Game Boy Advance game, um, a PSP game, Vita game, 3DS, DS. There were definitely that sector of games where they were made with handheld game sessions in mind. Most of that,
So can I just butt in here real quick?
yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the game that comes to mind when I think of this it's old now, but the remaster of Final Fantasy Type 0.
Mhm.
And like that was PSP era, and this game, what was the original console for this game? Was it also PSP?
Vita.
It was
This was
Vita.
Vita.
Okay, Vita.
Mhm.
But like early smartphone era when, before games on phones was basically ubiquitous, like you would bring out a PSP or a handheld game and play in 10, 15-minute spurts, on commutes
Yeah.
or when you're waiting or whatever. And like games like this, from what you've said, feel like that's kind of how they were designed. And that makes me think of like Final Fantasy Type 0, which is also very mission based. And when that remaster came out, it kind of felt weird playing that, on a console or on a PC, playing, these bite-sized chunks in like a remaster like console game. And this game,
Two
this
other
Gundam game,
examples:
feels similar. Go ahead.
Crisis Core and
Yes.
358 over 2 days, which is like it's
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
movie now or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, those are what I was thinking of for like bite size. Like both of those are very do this mission that takes 10 minutes.
But yeah, I 100% know what Josh is getting at with like, the design of the game is a factor of its handheld origin.
It's like this is one of the few, because obviously it wasn't available in English on Vita, and I imported every Gundam game because that's when I got into these games on the Vita when they had these Asia English boutique releases. Like there was like SD Gundam G Generation Genesis, which was the only game on 2 cartridges I think ever on the Vita. So I was looking at the others, and this was one that was never translated. And now I'm just wondering if I had to pick it up right now. Cullen told me it runs a little weirdly on Switch, so I was just thinking, is the PC port good enough to like play it there?
Oh yeah, the PC port is great. I run at 144 FPS. No drops for me. Very fast loading times. Like the PC port is pretty good. Um, on my end. So no
Okay, that's
complaints for
good.
me. Yeah. So I've been enjoying it there. So I might write like something a little feature on this. Just kind of talking about like, hey, we really got away from like these games that were designed for handhelds over the years. Like we do get some, as Brian mentioned, here and there, like with these remasters, recent remasters of Crisis Core, and so forth. But it really made me nostalgic, weirdly enough, of like playing like maybe 5 to 6 stages and then stopping and then picking it up again later. Just like these sessions, just this bite-sized sessions that are just it's. I'm not gonna say that the game is like absolutely phenomenal. Like it's definitely uh, operates weirdly in if you're thinking about like modern action games, like the controls can be a little bit wonky and strange and maybe a bit clunky until you start upgrading like the capabilities of like later mobile suits where it kind of feels a bit faster because of those um, stat um, stat increasements. But it does make me a little bit nostalgic over that game design, and I really appreciate it for that. And also the game doesn't really hold the player's hand in terms of like trying to present to you exactly what everything happened in Seed and Seed Destiny. It's not like filled with cutscenes or anything. It's very all killer, no filler. It's very, very gameplay focused. The most story that you get is maybe one or two like slides that like briefly describe the premise of the beginning of Seed of like, hey, here's it takes place in Cosmic Era, and there's tension between the naturals and the coordinators, and then you start getting to like your first stage, and then like any cutscenes that happen within the stage, it's usually just showing like there's enemy reinforcements from coming. This enemy pilot and mobile suit is getting onto the stage, like a quick like maybe like 3 to 5 second scene, and then same thing for your ally reinforcements when you're doing that. But other than that, it doesn't hold your hand at all in terms of like trying to present to you or trying to teach you what this anime is all about and its spin-offs. Um, it's pretty much a licensed game where it already either assumes the player knows it or they're just there to just have a fun time with a game, like a cool robot game that they picked up. They make no attempts whatsoever of trying to fill you in on what the hell any of this means. Like when you get to the starting screen and you see natural and coordinator, I imagine if you've never seen seed at all before, you're like, what the fuck does that mean? But it will not tell you what's. It's like it doesn't hold your hand of like tell you this is what a natural is what a coordinator is. It's just like it's straight to the action
No
right
fluff.
away. Yeah, pretty much no fluff.
Does it give you
But-
enough like threadbare context just to parse what you need to?
I mean it like the most you're gonna get in that is like when you're selecting like say stage 4, it'll show you the stage name and then like maybe a 1 paragraph summary of like the context of like why that stage is taking place. That's it pretty much. It is very bare bones in terms of like what it's the plot. Like there is virtually no presentation value to the
I mean,
plot.
if the gameplay is solid, it's fine. I mean, we have like games that are based on like anime adaptations, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna try to sum up what happened in the anime," but it's like a Cliff Note version, and it's just poorly presented, you know. And
You know what's there's a very recent example of this Hunter x
like,
Hunter Nen Impact demo.
but that's a fighting game, isn't it?
It okay, it's a fighting game, but it like the story mode in the tutorial. It's very much like it's screenshots of the anime with a synopsis over it and a narration, but it's like skipping over like entire Hunter x Hunter arcs for the tutorial. Like the Green Island arc is like here's how you play the game, and then it pretty much after you're done with that, it skips over the whole Green Island arc or whatever. And it's like there's like no it's trying to explain what the anime is and what happens, but still gonna be like the worst way to like experience it as a newcomer to Hunter x Hunter. There's no way, shape, and form that you should probably learn how you learn about the events that transpire in Hunter x Hunter. Like I would rather it just be how if they do it in Battle Destiny, where it's just like a one slide PowerPoint slide, and then it
Yeah.
just tells, and then like just keep everything else either contextless or just have like a paragraph of like what it's like showing instead of like trying to like give you a bare bones narration explanation of like what happens in the anime or in the manga, and it's like that. It's like you don't want to experience these revelations of what happens in this format. It feels so.
Or there's Dragon Quest Infinity Strash, which is adventure. It's literally just screen caps of the Adventures of Dai anime,
Literal slideshow.
with
literal
like a
slideshow.
voiceover, and then you do the like a couple of like the fights in that
Yeah.
arena style in that game.
And that's no way you should like experience that story whatsoever. Like I feel bad like for like Anna, for example. Like if I felt really bad, like this is how you like learn of like what happens a little, at least a little bit in like in that show and that manga. It's like it's actually a pretty like solid like anime adaptation, but it's just like there's no way to experience this thing.
Are you talking about
Um,
Die?
yeah,
Yeah,
Adventure
I
of
mean, I
Dai.
remember thinking after I played that, I was like, you know what? Die is a neat story. The game I can take or leave, but what a neat story. I'm glad I got to experience it in some fashion. This is probably not the best way to do it. There you go.
Do you get the
Yeah.
whole picture though? I remember you didn't even get the whole picture.
No,
Wasn't it
like
like,
I'm sure not, but I don't have the
no.
point of comparison. It ends early. It
Yeah,
ends
pretty
it
much.
ends at big tall golem thing, which I don't know
Yeah.
how far through the manga that is.
It's like maybe a little over halfway.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean it's this is a solid title, and it's like I think it's at $40 also, so it's not entirely unreasonable, but also I can see why people would wait for a discount. But I would hope it does well enough that it inspires Bandai Namco to remaster more of this era of like art think releases like Gundam Battle Universe and more and now that Macross is free from the mostly free from its previous jail situation in the West. Hopefully, we can get some of those older Macross titles if they could somehow,
I
you
think it's
know.
fine as long as they don't feature the original cast of people. You know?
Yeah, so I know some of those older games do have Do You Remember Love and the original Macross though, so those are still probably still iffy.
But
But yeah, I mean, I would love to see more of these games just be more at the very least be more accessible in modern systems. Just have a way to easily pick them up and play them without having to go through the emulator and totally telling people that yeah, I totally bought a copy of this game. Don't worry. Mhm. Wink,
well,
wink.
I just hope it inspires some other companies, not just Bandai. You could have Sega porting like Mercuria Chronicles free onto modern platforms. I mean, it kind of follows the same structures too. I mean, yeah, bite-sized maps and a lot, smaller things, but it has a lot more mechanic heavy.
I actually kind of consider Valkyria Chronicles 2 and 3 to be like practically different types of games than 1 and 4 because the way that those
Yeah.
are structured with like these interlocking kind of tiny bite-sized maps, you approach them so differently. I actually still think it's pretty darn cool, but it's just very different.
Yeah, I think they're pretty novel experiences. Like Valkyria Chronicles 2 will forever be a game I remember because my one like memory that I will never forget in games about that is me and my friend connecting through the multiplayer like Wi-Fi PS3 like Wi-Fi app or whatever.
Ad hoc party.
Ad hoc party, yes. And I just kept running over his Avon, the main protagonist of the game, like multiple times with my tank in that game. And I'm like, this is pretty funny. He's like, you're an ass. I'm like, yeah, but I hate Avon, so I gotta keep on running over your Avon with my tank because I don't like Avon.
This has nothing to do with the handheld aspect of it, but remember the class marks in Valkyria Chronicles 2? Those were fun.
Yeah.
It's like if you want to turn into a certain class, you better hope that class is randomly dropped by an
They
enemy.
were really interesting games. Like I know 2 especially gets a lot of shit, but I'm kind of fond of 2, even though I know it's a kind of very thematically a step back from 1 because the 1 was a very an interesting game at that time, and they kind of did, and then they kind of reversed course of not only just having the sequel be handheld exclusive, but also because they kind of returned back to this like kind of school time war story sort of format, which is relatively juvenile compared to how they presented that story. And but yeah, Mikhail also mentioned in the staff chat that unfortunately Gundam Seed Battle Destiny Remastered, even though it's like a relatively lower price than most games here in the US, it seems like in some regions it just gets fucked over by regional pricing in terms of like the
And
conversion and stuff.
it's a little funny because Bandai Namco is so weird with their pricing that some games will be priced as they should be, but others not. So this actually, like at least as an example in India, this Gundam Seed Battle Destiny Seed Remastered is about $10 or $15 equivalent more than Elden Ring Night Rain, which is
Jeez.
weird, right? Because both released pretty close to each other, same
Yeah.
publisher. But yeah, that's just one of the oddities, I guess, with what happens when you have like the team in one region handling pricing for everywhere else, and I don't know. But yeah, this I was going to import the physical because I think Wario64 posted that the Japanese one has English, but then Cullen told me to avoid the Switch version, so I'm like, okay, I'll just get it on
Yeah,
Steam.
I can't speak. Yeah, I can't speak to the speaker.
Yeah, and if Cullen
You,
tells me
you,
to avoid the
yeah,
Switch
yeah,
version,
yeah,
I
yeah. I was gonna
definitely should.
say, yeah. If Colin of all people is saying Switch version bad, it's like, oh, that's gotta be fucking awful.
Yeah. So
And
the
this
last
actually made me.
go
Sorry,
for
just
it.
interrupt. This just reminded me of this conversation I was having with James and someone else on Blue Sky about how the Labyrinth of Refrain and uh, Galleria, apparently, like James has played the Vita versions and they are uncapped or like hit 60 FPS, but the Switch versions are 30.
Yep.
Weirdly, you have these. So I was just wondering if it's one of those situations where instead of just
They
porting
ported
the
the
like
PS4
you
version.
yeah, yeah. So I'm just wondering what happened with this one that you have performance issues here. But then I don't know anyone who's played it on like Switch and Vita to know. Maybe we'll bug James into doing it. But yeah, that's
I've
for
not
another.
played it on Vita.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't remember like the how the Vita performance ran. Like I maybe there were dips like big explosion effects. I don't remember it running badly.
I don't trust my like impressions on how a game ran on like that generation of consoles because I remember a couple of buddies of mine. We tried to go through Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate before the servers went down on Wii U, and we got everything set up. We got everything good to go, and we were so excited. And then we hopped in, and then we immediately saw how the performance was when we went up against like a fucking Kurapeko with 4 people. It's like that's like 15 FPS, and we're like, yeah, we're good.
That's awesome.
And I didn't remember any of that.
Yep, that's what time will do to you. Yeah, and there's really there's not really any new content or new story things in this remaster. There's nothing from the Seed Freedom movie. There's obviously nothing from the Seed Recollection thing from that's exclusive to the G Generation Eternal mobile game. There's nothing new in terms of like content. It's just like, hey, here's a modern re-release of it with a new coat of paint. Like the visuals are new, but that's pretty much it. And the UI and stuff are new to this. But It's cool. I enjoy it. I'm almost 100% in it, even though like I'm about a little over 10 hours in. And there's still like challenge stages and stuff that like I'll eventually get around to when I feel like playing it. But I hope they do more of this, and I would like to see that because they're certainly not making any new significant Gundam games outside of like including them in the new Super Robot Wars or making a G generation game that's now mobile. Like I wish there was like just like new Gundam games that were outside of like these well established like long running series and like kind of just like for example like Gundam Crossfire. Like it doesn't have like the greatest legacy, but like it was them still trying new stuff with Gundam in terms of like brand new IP and games
Was that the
that like
Overwatch
that
one?
aren't no, that's the PS3 one.
Oh,
But I didn't
what
hate
was the
Gundam
Overwatch one
Evolution.
called? Evolution.
Gundam
Okay.
Evolution. Yeah, and that was a cool thing that like oh, that's an interesting thing that I don't know if it's gonna like work in this format. And like for the first several months, like my friends and I really enjoyed that game. It was like
Yeah.
new, it was fresh. They like a lot of the problems with Gundam Evolution is like the
The
monetization was just
monetization,
shit.
yep.
Yeah, it wasn't really a matter of like the game itself, more so than like the monetization strategy and business decision, business behind it. But I can see where they were going. It's like, oh man, this is really so cool. If they just figured it out on the business end, this could have been massively successful. But fortunately, didn't pan out.
I was gonna ask you, do you remember that one time they worked with From Software to make like a third person, like kind of like a mobile, like a real
Yeah,
robot game, Ace?
they did it on multiple times. They did it with Ace, another Centuries episode for people who don't know, which is like another crossover robot series, but it was like an action third person action game. And then they also worked with From Software again for the Gundam Unicorn PS3 game, and that was pretty solid as well. And I kind
Yeah,
of
I heard it was very good.
yeah, I really wish that like they found a way to that should be their next fucking re-release. That'd be fucking awesome. Like, I think the time is right too because people really fucking love FromSoft these days. They should do it. Fuck.
Yeah, I think with Night Rain and how it's doing on PC at least, we can say pretty like certainly that outside of Nintendo and Rockstar, they're probably the single developer most that has the best like name recognition at this point. It's crazy.
Yeah, they need to. They really need to do that. A modern release of the Gundam Unicorn game, just slap From Software's logo all over it. You'll get people fucking eating that shit up, man.
Is this going to be like on this Oblivion re-release on Xbox 360 back compatibility? It says from the makers of Skyrim. I found that super funny.
Yeah.
That's what, yeah. Yeah,
I
from
get
the
why they
makers
do
of,
it though.
Elden Ring. Oh my god, it'd be so good if they put that. Oh, I would love that so much. You just have that in the trailer from the makers of Elden Ring. You have the fucking unicorn. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Josh, for kicking off a discussion on Gundam Seed Battle Destiny Remastered, as well as the state of Gundam games and the state of kind of this like bite-sized handheld games, which have been largely, but not entirely, kind of sequestered away to the mobile space for now. And it's kind of fun just to have that variety in the way that these games are paced, or what the standard gameplay session should quote unquote be. Well, the next game we have here is, stop me if you've heard this before, not a game that I know much about, but I know it's been recently in vogue lately due to the announcement of remasters and a new entry. This is Onimusha 2. Onimusha 2 Remastered. I believe it's an action game, like pure action. But again, like I said, this is a game where I know its title, and that's pretty much it. Chow, for first time in a while, I think we're going to hand the microphone over to you. For you've been playing through this remastered game, and I believe you said before we started recording that it was one of your favorites. So just tell us about Onimusha 2. Maybe kind of tee me up on what sort of game it is, and your thoughts on the remaster.
So Onimusha was a project helmed by Keiji Inafune. I know this guy is very infamous these days, but this is actually one that his best work as a producer, I'll tell you that. So, when the first game first started, it was kind of like a survival horror, closer to Resident Evil, and it's like it has a lot of RPG mechanics in general, but it still feels more of a survival horror with like swords kind of thing, right? Or katanas, if you want to
Yeah,
go that.
the
Survival horror
common
with
thing.
swords.
Yeah, the common thing that you heard about the first Onimusha, it's like it's samurai Resident Evil, and it's very emblematic of that because it has that fixed camera angle when you're traversing through the game. and you kind of get almost jump scared by like these undead soul like enemies throughout screens.
So when they make the sequel, it's a lot different. It's similar, like it has tank controls, it has like the pre-render backgrounds, but the combat is a lot smoother, right? And so it's like that's the first improvement, right? As you play the sequel. But obviously, this is on the remaster, so when you buy the remaster, they basically force you to not play in tank controls. You had to like change the settings. It's default to like modern controls, so it gets a little jank when you like go through a different screen and the cameras kind of shift to like a different like pre-rendered background, right? But so this game, the second game, what happens in the second game? Okay, so let's just start back with the first game because you need like a little premise of the first game first. So the first game, you basically fight demons. In the was it the warring era of Japan? I'm not like too familiar with
Yeah,
like
the warring period.
Japanese history, but it's like it's an alternative take with where Nobunaga gets freaking assassinated by an arrow to his neck, and then the the demons just took his corpse in, and you don't know what happened to him in the first game, right? But it kind of like hints that they resurrect him and they did something, right? And then the second game, Nobunaga uses his demon army trying to conquer the world with it, and that's kind of like the premise of the second game, right? And one of the things with Onimusha is that they always use like real life like Japanese actors as like the face model for their protagonists. So it's a pretty popular like actor, but I'm not really familiar with who the actor was. So you'll have to like search that up because I don't remember his name on the spot, right? But yeah, so the second game basically starts with Nobunaga invading the Yagyu village. I'm sure people might be familiar with like Jubei Yagyu, like from the I don't know, maybe like Samurai Showdown games, like the guy with the eye patch with the two swords.
Yeah, the Japanese actor that they modeled that protagonist for in the Onimusha 2 was Yusaku Matsuda.
Okay.
Yeah, the pretty famous Japanese actor. Passed away in 1989.
Hey, well, yeah, I definitely don't know that history, but I just heard he was pretty famous. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, you're kind of playing as Jubei Yagyu. If you beat the original game, back in the PS2 era, there will be like a preview for the second game, and the preview of the second game it shows a guy with like an eye patch with two swords, right? But on the final version, his designs got changed. He doesn't have like the eye patch, and he only used a single sword. And their excuse was like everybody in this village is named Jubei, so it's not the like the Jubei from the historical figure or something like that. That's kind of like what happens in here, right? That's kind of getting to like into the weeds of things, right? But basically, the Nobunaga invaded the Yagyu village, killed off everybody, and then our protagonist comes in, and he's trying to find who did this, and then he's granted like the power to drain demons' souls, which is kind of like a mechanic in the first one. When you kill like enemies, you can drain their soul, and then you can use it to upgrade your weapons and armor and stuff, right? So it has like a little RPG element to it from that, right? Um, and then after that, he's gonna go to a village, like a mining village, to, investigate like those demons that did destroy his village, right? And from here, he meets like several friends. You kind of see them in the opening movie, but they all have like what's it like, kind of like a relationship thing. So you have two people, right? So you can meet like Etke and what was his name? Saiga? I forgot his name. It's like he's the guy with the rifle that you could see in the opening movie, and these two will have like beef against each other, and so you're like how the route is determined in this game is based on like your relationship with like the characters because every character has a riff with like one another. So if you're like too friendly with the monk guy, the guy with the rifle is not friends with you. If you're too friendly with the guy with the rifle, the monk will hate you. It's just kind of like that kind of relationship mechanics, right? And then you can also find items in throughout like your journey and give those items as gifts to like improve your relationship with them. So it has a lot of like RPG mechanics, and that's why I kind of think that this game feels more like RPG to me than a action or survival game, right? Um, the other thing is like with this remaster is you get access to all like most of the features like right from the get go. You can even play the game in Issen mode. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with Issen mode in the original. It's called critical mode now, right?
Yeah, it's like a pretty like super hard difficulty where like I think everything dies in one hit.
Not that one. There is a mode that dies in one hit. That's something newly added in the
Oh,
remaster.
okay.
So critical is, or Isin back in the day. Critical is like, when your enemy's about to hit you, you would just press your attack at the right time. You see like this white flash, and it's like a very cool strike that instantly kill enemies. It's like it's so easy to do in the second game, right? The timing is a lot easier and everything. So the game is kind of like trying to encourage you to use this like kind of like a parry mechanic to kill everything, right? And that's why I
Yeah.
love the second game because of this critical system, right?
Yeah.
And for the remaster, they give you this mode called like critical mode, like they let you access it right away, and you can. It basically forces that you have to kill every enemy with this parry like one shot mechanic, right? If you can't do it, then they just invincible. So they added that mode right from the get go. You don't have to like beat the game or anything to unlock
Okay,
it,
that's
right?
pretty cool. Yeah.
So it's very feature heavy. Like you could get all the features like immediately. I know there's a lot of like people being upset on like the Steam forum saying that the game is censored because they give you the alternative costumes like right from the get go, and one of the costumes got censored because it shows a bunch of cleavage in the original. Blah 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 blah. But I wouldn't use the costume in my opinion. I think this costume is completely pointless in my opinion because you have a girl that's dressed up like a 70s disco character in like 1500 Japan, right? It's like it looks so out of place, so I wouldn't use it, right? But yeah, so you get all like the features right from the get go. But the critical mode is like the funnest thing about Onimusha because it's a mechanic that they don't really explain much in the game. But once you like discover it, it's like it just becomes like a whole different game if you get what I'm saying, right?
Was that the one hit mode or the other one?
It's just like the parry strike thing that they use,
Oh, you
right?
have to kill with parry strikes. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, like the whole game is like once you discover this thing, it's like it becomes like night and day difference. Like it's in the first game as well, but in the first game the timing is like really a lot more harder to pull off, and the enemies are a lot less focused on it. And then when they made like maybe like the third or the fourth game, they kind of nerf the system, and then it just kind of becomes more like a mashy action game, in my opinion.
Mm.
Like it's very bad in like New Dawn when they like completely nerf this parry thing, right? Because it was too strong in the second game, right? Um,
I think one of the interesting things about this new remaster compared to the original, because in the original you had the like you still had the Onimusha mode, but in the original you would automatically activate it when you um get the proper amount of orbs, and then I'll just like imagine Devil Trigger and Devil May Cry automatically popping instead of you having to instead of you manually popping it in Devil May Cry. So like in this remaster, my understanding is that you can now just manually go into Onimusha state instead of being automatically forced into it whenever you happen to get enough resources to activate it.
yeah, you also could use. It also has like auto critical attacks when you're using that mode. Is like if you like parried in that mode, you could like combo it too. Because I think like one of the cool things you could do is you could like combo chain critical hits.
Mhm.
And if
Yeah.
you play in your Onimusha like mode, you can actually like auto chain that critical hits, which is really cool. So
Yeah, that's always fun. It's like that reminds me of like what I like a little game called Samurai Western. That was like published by Atlas. Like where it had like definitely that sort of mode where like you almost like slow down time and then you slash up dudes really fast in that game while time is slowed. So you kind of have like this feeling of like you just slashed up like five dudes in a flash. You know, you're like, oh, badass because I did it, did it like this. So I think the most interesting thing about this game is how versatile it is in terms of like the way you progress it. Because you mentioned like the partners in this game, but it's working a lot with a lot of early like variable storytelling in games in terms of like how you in terms of like missable narrative. Like in this game, you have like those four partners with you, and as you said, you give them things to raise your relationship with them, but everything you get anything you give them won't always raise their relationship. It can actually have the opposite effect. Like let's say like you know this statue, you give it to one of them, so one of them may like it, another person may really dislike it, and that'll have like real um like effects on you down the road, because even though the main storyline of Onimusha 2 doesn't really change that much, there are definitely stages and scenes that are permanently missable, and by design, because usually out of like the four-ish side characters that you meet and ally with, they usually have some beef with like another person that you are also friends with. So there'll be times down the road where you have to kind of make a decision of like, hey, I really want to invest in my relationship with these two characters at the expense of making these other two hate me. And then down the road in the main narrative, you may not get access to certain stages because those two other people hate you. And even in some missions, they'll like betray you because they do not like you that much. Um, and that's a really interesting thing about this game, which is a really, really, really big change from the first game, where it's less of like a linear Resident Evil esque skin, and more of like trying to find its own identity through this party like light party system that does have narrative changes throughout like your progression throughout the game. And I remember Onimusha 2 is also very infamous for just having a really, really evil final boss. Like that final boss will just kick your ass because the camera in it is so fucking bad. I
I think
remember
that's
that.
I think that's the problem with back of these old games with the pre-rendered backgrounds, right? As soon as like you're in the wrong position, the camera just kind of shifts, and you're just like, "Oh fuck, I can't see anything now," right?
So yeah, so for people who don't know, like I won't spoil who it is, but like basically one of the final fights in this game is like this flying demon, and you're in this like almost like rectangle arena, but it's split off into different isometric camera angles. So you're trying to fight this demon, flying demon, and if you're like going to like one part of the that arena, it'll shift the entire camera view because it's like a fixed isometric angle. So your orientation will just be totally maybe in a direction you're about to like do like a combo, but you totally whiff because the camera changed mid combo, and your orientation is totally different from what you thought it was gonna be at the start of it. So now you've totally whiffed that on your opponent, and that opponent will just poke at you and make you mad on that. And that boss fight is like kind of tough too. Like, like if you're not prepared out, like even if you have like a max item inventory, like you'll go through. It is definitely one of those games like you hoard items to expend at that fight because you are going to be using a lot of it. If you're not expecting it, it is that is one hell of a final fight in a game. I remember Onimusha 2 for that fight.
Uh,
It it's an interesting game. I really dig the just total shift in like, and I guess this is like kind of what makes Onimusha an interesting series. It's like it's never the same game per sequel. It's not like like they make enough changes to the formula that it kind of makes you feel like it's always a fresh take on it. It's not like Final Fantasy esque like in that sense, but like they're
it's
always willing
different
to try
enough.
new ideas. Yeah.
It's definitely different enough. The third game would be like you would be playing as two different protagonists, and one of them is Gene Reno. So you get like switching between like the two. It's just like, oh, it's like if you collect the items of the other character is like the item is not here or something like that. It's just like
Yeah, yeah, and I really hope they do the third one because that game is one hell of a game. It's very very strange, but it's really um it's neat, and I do hope they do a Dawn of Dreams. Dawn of Dreams is like my favorite Onimusha from them.
yeah, that's
It's
fair.
yeah,
It's one of the most favorite one too.
yeah. I'm really curious what they're gonna do with that new Onimusha game. Like I'm very 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 excited to see what ideas they have in store for that one because it's just been so long, and I'm like, I don't know what you do to kind of freshen that up, but I think that mystery is interesting.
Do you think they'll have all the Onimusha ports by the time that new one comes out?
Uh, it's scheduled for next year. I don't think they'll have. I I think if they're doing a third one right now, I think they'll have the third one out. I don't think they'll have a Dawn of Dreams out by then. I'm like thinking of like of this hypothetical timeline, right? But if that were the case, if they were working on the third one now, I think they would have that one out and then that new game, and then hopefully Dawn of Dreams down the line. That's my guess.
The new Onimusha has to be like Q1 next year, right? Very likely.
That's what.
So
Yep.
And who knows? Like maybe you guys could give it a shot. By that time, maybe it might be even more RPG focused than what we might expect.
I mean, yeah, I would say Data Dreams is like pretty much an action RPG. Like
yeah,
that is,
I totally agree with that take.
yeah.
So, but it's like it started as like a horror with swords, then it slowly kind of drifted away from that. You know, it became more.
I
Like
mean, it's the same way that like how the whole shift of Resident Evil 3 to Resident Evil 4. Like Resident Evil 4, even you can even argue that has RPG-esque elements with the way that you upgrade your weaponry in 4 compared to past Resident Evils.
Did we decide if we were going to cover Way of the Sword?
we have not yet. We're just sort of waiting on it. Like, I think
Yeah.
a lot of people sort of assume this is going to be Souls-ish, not based on nothing, but we'll see how it looks. I'm assuming they're going to show this sometime this summer. I don't think that's a stretch. So
They did coin the term Demon Souls before the Demon Souls game came out in Onimusha 2. You do get Demon Souls in these games before that game came. So yeah, I mean it's cool that I definitely want to replay the series before the new one comes out. I mean these aren't long games either way. Like they're
like 8 hours usually.
yeah.
I was just gonna say, like for this port, I'm playing on the PC version, and the PC version's port is not perfect in my opinion. There are some issues that I have with it. My issue is that you have like a lot of screen tearing for a game that's old. I don't know why. You know, you like I watched like the intro cinematic, and there's like so much screen tearing on it. You know, and I feel like the VSync option doesn't do anything in this. So I don't know. Maybe they'll fix it. You know, I
Hopefully.
see people in the discussions are having the same issues as I
Nice.
am. So it doesn't
Yeah.
sound like it's a my thing kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a fairly recent release, so hopefully they they might have slipped through the cracks, and hopefully they'll just release a patch for it soon enough.
And I also want to mention that this remaster is like the first time you get to like officially play it with like Japanese voices or something like that. Because when it was released in the PS2 version, it's like they have just English voices because they couldn't fit the Japanese audio on a disc, right? So
Yeah.
this time you could actually play it in Japanese audio. Obviously, when you use the Japanese audio, you'll find that a lot of times there will be like dialogue, but the characters are not talking because they're just not synced in with like like the Japanese like mouth movements or whatever. So you'll be like seeing text bubble, but no one's talking, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of like one of the things I want to mention about this port, right?
It's cool that they revisited and took the time because there was like understandably a lot of worry that like when they released that Onimusha 1 Warlords port out a few years ago, they were just like radio silent on that series after. It's like it felt like a one and done thing. They're like it felt very out of nowhere, and it's a one off until this resurgence once more of like, hey, we're actually doing a new Onimusha and we are releasing the second one, which is it's really cool to see. I'm glad that there wasn't a one off.
I was gonna say, like, I didn't buy the first remaster simply because they couldn't get the original soundtrack back. I know they can mod it to get it back, but that original soundtrack is a whole can of worms because
Yeah, I mean, I understandably like they couldn't get that soundtrack because it was later found out that the composer of that game like ghost wrote that soundtrack. Like someone else.
it's
for that.
basically like the Persona 5 story with the second palace. It's basically that in real life, basically. If you want to
I
look
guess
it up.
that's a way to do. I mean, yes. I mean, there are definitely if that's the easiest way for people to understand that concept, then yes, use the Persona 5 seconds. Yeah, it's cool. That thank you for just the Onimusha discussion, and hopefully we'll see more very shortly. I'm hopeful. Hopefully it like pops up in SGF or something.
yeah, I mean,
crossing
like
my
Monster Hunter
fingers.
usually showed up there, and Capcom usually has an appearance, and this is obviously their next big game, so I expect it.
Yep.
The last game we have listed before going on to news, we're going to return over to James, who has recently played a new update for Final Fantasy 14. I believe it's 7.25. Now, I've seen you and
Correct.
Tony in our staff chat like linking images and tweeting back and forth or skeeting back and forth, and I I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, there's a couple of inside jokes, like, look at this funny screenshot, and I don't know what I'm looking at.
So bring us to the inside.
Yeah, we need to be brought inside here.
Okay, so some context. Stormblood and Shadowbringers had a type of content called exploration zones, or I guess technically called field ops, but they were a type of optional endgame content that instead of being just the theme park type thing that like obviously most of 14 is, actually focused on exploration. They kind of forced you to engage. Basically, it treated the game like an actual fucking MMO. And Endwalker didn't really have one of those, and as a result, a lot of people thought that Endwalker's post like game content, like the gameplay loop for Endwalker, if you weren't doing raids, was just not very good because you had a deep dungeon, but most of the time, like I'll mention that Endwalker had a deep dungeon, people will be like, it had a deep dungeon? Because fucking nobody even knew about that. There was the variant and criterion dungeons, which were four players, but you could also solo them. And again, it was the same situation where if you didn't raid, like the criterion dungeons had like harder variants, but there wasn't really a good reason to do so because they didn't really give you good rewards. And so just the vast majority of the player base didn't even touch them. But Stormblood and Shadowbringers had those exploration zones. They had Eureka and Boja, respectively. And one of the first things they announced for Dawn Trail was that, yes, we heard you. We're going to make something like this for Dawn Trail. And with 7.25, we got the first part of the exploration, the field op for Dawn Trail, which is Crescent Isle, which is very much FF5 inspired. One of the things that these field ops do is they usually have some sort of like subsystem that kind of tacks on top of the regular gameplay. So you had like the elemental stuff in Eureka, you had lost actions and Boja. In Crescent Isle, you get phantom jobs, which are these additional jobs you can equip, kind of like a sub job that you level up and they get different abilities that you can use. So, for example, right now I have Thief as a phantom job. And one of the things that they said in the lead up to this is they wanted to make it so that for these phantom jobs, since they're not part of the regular gameplay loop, that they could get a little bit crazy with them. So one of the abilities I have with Thief is Steal, which increases the ability, like the chance of getting a drop. Another ability I can get is a trait that allows me to open locked doors in dungeons, which is useful for the raid, the Fort Tower, which I haven't done yet. We'll get to that in a bit. But there's all sorts of stuff. Like Geomancer has an ability that can let you levitate someone. And that means if there's any traps on the ground in the dungeon, you can avoid that. But even beyond that, there's some attacks in like CEs, which are basically like these, the main combat thing you can do in the open world, and Fates that are basically like an earthquake. But if you're floating, you could just stand right in the AoE and you won't take any damage because it's like they're not hitting you. You're floating, they're not hitting you. So I'm enjoying it quite a bit, though I do have a few complaints. One of them is going to be really only a complaint that people are going to understand if they're really deep in the weeds in 14. So I apologize in advance. A lot of stuff on the market board has absolutely cratered in value because a lot of stuff that was previously rare drops that required very specific things for you to do to get in Eureka and Boja, now you can just randomly find and randomly spawn treasure chests on the map in like Crescent Isle, which is a big deal because like, yeah, it makes it easier for people to get these items, but the problem is that it's already been tough enough to like get people into Eureka and Boja. And now since you can just get these things more easily in current content, and even next expansion, you're going to be able to get the stuff more easily in Crescent Isle. Like the people doing Eureka and Boja is just going to completely disappear because nobody's going to do the content. Because one of the reasons people did it before was, okay, this stuff is rare if I want to get it, or if I want to sell it, then I want to do this content, which means that there's going to be people in these instances, and people are going to be able to progress through it and eventually do the raids in them. And that's been a problem with Boja for like years at this point, where if you did not get into Boja when it started, like pretty much anyone doing Boja now are doing it in the last zone, Zadnor. But if you're trying to do it now, nobody's in the first zone. You can't find parties to do the CEs. You can't find parties to do the first of the raids. It's a big problem.
They've accidentally like invalidated the old content in a way.
Yes. Yeah. And it's
Yeah, I can see
just
that being frustrating.
yeah. So I'm very much not a big fan of that. But from a gameplay perspective, I'm liking this a bit. One thing I do dislike is that to get into the raid for the first section of Crescent Isle, it's based off of when a certain weather pattern spawns. Now, here's the problem. When that weather pattern spawns, you have like 4 or 5 minutes to actually go to a specific spot in the map and offer up a resource. And if 16 people offer up the resource, then the actual raid itself spawns. But since it only lasts for like 4 or 5 minutes, it can spawn when the vast majority of people are doing a CE on the map, and those CEs take like 7 or 8 minutes. So if it spawns when you're in the middle of that chances are you're not going to be able to get there in time before the weather ends. So the only way realistically people are going to be able to do the raid is if they go onto these discords that are dedicated to this stuff, and that just doesn't feel good. I feel like the weather should last like 15 minutes. Because yeah, you're going to want coordination to do this regardless, but it just doesn't feel well designed in the sense that most people are just not even going to see it, because you can't, like, these instances can have up to 72 people. The raid, you want to have like 48 people. You're not going to get people into that, like enough people that are already raid ready into that instance. Like, it's going to get better over time when more and more people are at a high enough, like, there's a separate leveling system for this content called knowledge level. It's going to get easier to get into raid that way when more and more people have max knowledge level. But the problem is that even if they do, if people are trying to grind to get like their phantom jobs like leveled up, or if they want to get like upgrades to their gear, they're going to be doing those CEs. And if the CE spawns and it overlaps with that weather, unless they increase the duration of the weather, it's just nobody's going to get into the raid. And it just doesn't feel like it's very well designed in that sense. I don't know if that
Can
makes
you did you explain the CE? I'm trying to parse it in my head.
critical engagements. They're like literal like fights with a bunch of people on the in the encounter. Like, I'm doing one right now with 54 people out of the possible 72 that can be on the map. So like, if the weather spawned right now, there would literally, like, unless every single person that's not doing the CE is max level and goes to the specific spot in the map to start the raid, we will not get the raid if it spawns like right now.
And the spawn is completely random, or is it like probabilistic?
We don't know yet if there's something you can trigger it, but if somebody randomly triggers it while everyone else is in the raid, that doesn't really change anything. It's still not great. But yeah.
How would you, like, if you had the keys, how would you like shift it if you could?
I would make it so that the weather only spawns if a CE is almost completed. That way, it'll overlap, but it'll always guarantee that people will be able to get in and do the raid if they want to, because it'll finish up the CE with enough time for people to get to it. And that would also
rather than having like a competing priority if it spawned too early, and then people are either at the CE or they have to run to the raid.
Yeah, and I also think it would make it so that like later on, eventually people are not going to want to run the CEs because of that exact problem. And because once you get a full set of gear and you've augmented it the first time, there's like literally no reason for you to run the CEs because you'll want to just like chain farm mobs to get the gold pieces, which you'll need for the second stage of augmenting gear. So like in the far, far future, like a month and a half, 2 months from now, and beyond, you're gonna see a lot less people wanting to do these CEs because it's like once they've gotten the field notes, which are part of the like once they've gotten everything they need from them, there's just not going to be a reason for people to really do it, especially if they want to do the raid, because it's just like an obstacle to doing the raid.
It's
That
not
makes
quite
sense.
analogous, but there's some like required to be multiplayer events in Guild Wars 2 that are a little bit long in the tooth, and there's no real incentive anymore to do them. It's similar sorts of things about like the materials that used to be exclusive can now be found in so many other places, etc. And it's almost like you go to the Reddit and different guilds or orgs or whatever will like almost do like a charity, like, hey, we're going to schedule doing this event that otherwise you're not going to find enough people to do naturally. And it almost feels like the community had to bolster a shortcoming in like the emergent design of saying like back when this was new or contemporary, you could find people to do it and it made some sense. But as these games just pile on different systems that occupy the same gameplay space or literally give you the same resources, in order to keep the other content relevant, the players almost took it upon themselves to do that. I bring that up, and I'm just wondering, is there like, whether it's Boja or Eureka or some of the other gameplay modes, and again, a lot of these I don't have direct experience with, is there any way like the players themselves can kind of
Yes.
keep them evergreen?
Yes, and that's what I mean is that you basically have to go on a Discord. Like for
Mhm.
Eureka and Boja, there's like different Discords for each data center that are kind of focused on them. Like ABBA is the Aether-based Baldesian Arsenal Discord, which is also the main group that's scheduling runs for the new raid. So if you're not doing runs with them right now, you're just not doing it. And my plan actually is once I get a full set of the base level gear and I get like at least 5 of the Phantom jobs mastered, I'm going to start going into those raids to try and clear it because I feel like that will be enough prep that I won't be fucking trolling. The problem is I don't think there's going to be any blind run, like no callouts runs for that yet because people are already kind of going really hard on trying to make sure that, oh, let's do this all pre-planned. And that's one of the problems with those Discords is since they're like, it's all community focused. They're obviously in it to win it. They don't want to actually try and do the content blind. And it's like for regular raids, that wouldn't be a problem because you could have a static and it's like you just need 7 other people, which even then, 7 other people is a bit of an ask. But for this, you need 47 other people, which obviously
Yeah.
people are going to try and like make sure each run counts if it's like wrangling 47 other people every time. Not to mention, like, actually getting, like, the full 48 people in a single instance is a problem because it's randomized which instance you get into. It's,
I almost have a hard time just even parsing that, mainly because I've never done an MMO event that was more than 12 people, a raid or alliance battle or strike or
a
whatever.
and it's not
So
impossible
imagining a
sometimes.
48 person group and coordinating that, I'm just like, yeesh, intimidating.
It's like it's not impossible because when the Chaotic Alliance raid dropped late last year, I actually had a full 24-man static with a couple of buddies of mine. More than a couple of buddies of mine, it was 23 other people. To do
Two
that,
dozen
and
buddies of mine.
yeah, like we did that, and that was a great time. We wanted to do something similar for this, but it's like 48 people is just too much, and the fact that it's pretty much impossible to guarantee that you all get in the same instance. So it's like, on one hand,
Yeah, I feel
it
that.
feels like the content's kind of at odds with itself because it's like it's a chicken and egg problem. Like it doesn't really feel like you can just do it with randoms because of the way that the area is designed. But really, it's almost impossible to do it with anyone but randoms, which is the problem. But yeah, I'm liking it. I'm definitely enjoying it. I mean, I don't even want to think about how many hours into it already, but I'll probably write up some impressions for it so far later today, like before I do the raid. I feel like since a lot of people aren't even going to touch it, that's fair. And then I'm going to either put up something here or for Nova Crystallis once I do the raid, because I don't know if it's something that we specifically want a write up on, or if it's something that, you know, Tony will want to write up on or something like that. But either way, there will be some sort of impressions for this in the near future. Probably later today, I'll probably like go to a coffee shop and write something out in my Fuga review. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. If you're a 14 player, you've probably been playing this. This has been the first time in quite a bit outside of my static that I've been on a Discord voice call with other like friends of mine and just like grinding the shit out of this, having a good time. It's something that the game's missed for the last like several years. This is probably the most engaging content they've dropped in the game since Boja, and that was like 5 years ago.
My last question, before we go on to articles and news, is like, were people expecting this update to be as kind of big and well received as it was, or was it more of a surprise?
Yes. People were expecting it because of exactly what happened. Like the lack of it was very sorely felt in Endwalker, so people were kind of expecting this. Also, a lot of people are of two minds about the way that it ties into the relic weapon grind, which is like the penultimate grind in the game. And some people are like, oh, why is it RNG where everyone that actually likes to grind in this game is like, thank fucking God it's not a random currency grind like last time. Thank God there's some fucking flavor and it's tied to the exploration zone. Thank God.
Well, keep
But
your
yeah.
eyes out for either here or Nova Crystallis for James's final thoughts on the Final Fantasy 14 update. And I just shout out Nova Crystallis in general. I know they cover that game very, very well and have lots of passionate both writers and I presume readers for all this stuff. Or you might see it here. We'll see.
Shout out Tony Garso. He's a cool guy. He's great.
Tony's pretty cool.
I'm gonna write about the like update like at a base level. I just don't know if I'm gonna write about the raid here because that's like kind of going into the weeds.
Yeah. We'll go into. I guess James is probably going to end up continuing to talk for a fair bit because we'll pretty quickly go into some previews here. Before that, though, we did mention Elden Ring Night Rain, of course, just released, and we do have a review up on the site. While we didn't talk to it at depth in our like intro games talk section here, I do want to at least shout out that Scott White did cover Night Rain and put a review up on the site, rpgsite.net, for us. His main concerns were that he didn't like the relic system, though he did still like the bosses and the lore in that sense. But I do know that, Mikhail, you've been able to play a little bit of the retail release of Night Rain, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, obviously you didn't review it for us, but I don't know if you want to just be by proxy lead any small discussion on Night Rain here, just in terms of it released, at least acknowledge your initial reception to it.
Yeah, so when I played Elden Ring, the original game, it was like 99% solo. I think I only did the multiplayer just to see how it works, and I found it a little annoying. I know there's like a seamless co-op mod which is there on PC, but I haven't looked at like my main save for Elden Ring is actually on Steam Deck because like for anyone who's played it, the PC port is kind of dog shit. So the only way to play it without getting motion sickness for me was playing it on Steam Deck and capping it to 30 FPS. So that was my main thing, and I never played it in multiplayer. So when this was announced, I thought, is this going to actually be interesting or not? And because it's Elden Ring, I was like, I want to do something around it. So we got code for it specifically so I could do the my usual Steam Deck and handheld article on it. And I honestly, besides watching the trailers, which I've been posting about for news and all, I didn't know what to expect because I didn't try the beta much more than like 5 minutes. I know Josh played the beta, but yeah, in the end, I ended up liking it quite a bit based on what I've played. I haven't seen the credits because, like, the matchmaking pre-release was not the best, at least when I was checking. So I managed getting about 3 or 4 hours in, specifically in the multiplayer, like regularly. I had help with like Noah from Steam Deck HQ. We were matchmaking and trying it because I specifically wanted to make sure it works when I'm on Steam Deck and someone else is on Steam Deck to play. And as for the game itself, it it's annoying that there's no duo, like two-player mode, because I feel like most people I know who play Elden Ring and Dark Souls just play it with two people together when they can, and they do the back and forth. You know how it works, right? You have to do like one boss in your world and one boss in their world because they handle it a bit weirdly. So
Yep.
that is a little annoying. Finding a
That
third person was a bit difficult.
yeah, that's
Go
one
ahead, James.
reason. Yeah, that's one reason why people like the seamless co-op mod, and why pretty much anyone that plays on PC, like actively that I know of, pretty much exclusively uses it because it makes the co-op experience way better. And I've done a bunch of different playthroughs, like not all of them like completed, but like I have some of the friends I had in high school, like they just if sometimes like when it's in between like major game releases or like we don't know what to play, fuck it, new seamless co-op run on like Elden Ring. That's I think a lot of people are like that.
Yeah, so there's no two-player mode, which is annoying, but I did want to try out the solo mode, and I just was not enjoying myself at all playing this solo. It does not feel balanced at all with that, and I know they're addressing something in the update coming next week. I don't know how they can make it fun because this game feels very much designed for multiplayer, and I think the solo and offline support was just like a thing they had to ship. Otherwise, people would have been really mad that you're like FromSoft is shipping an online only multiplayer game. So I feel it really feels like one of those things. As for the game itself, it's faster. I like the new music. I like the gameplay mechanics. In a lot of ways, I've seen people call it a mod for Elden Ring, and I call it a mod for Elden Ring complimentary, if that makes sense, because it it's a budget price thing and it's good because I don't feel like playing more of Elden Ring like itself because I played so much of it. So this is a nice remixed way to experience that world again with new content and with old content together. So I will be playing it on and off. But yeah, there's one thing I want to bring up in one of the interviews I did with Durante. I think it was for Daybreak 2 or for, I don't remember if it was in my East 10 one or the Daybreak 2 one. But I asked him whether he was going to play Night Rain, and he said he definitely will. But he hopes that FromSoft offers more than 16 is to 9 and more than 60 FPS. Well, unfortunately for Durante and anyone playing on PC, the PC port is exactly the same as Elden Ring, same issues, same shader stuff. It's just
Yeah,
bad.
it's not
So
just shader, it's also like loading stutters. Like I know that like legitimately I said on like Blue Sky, when I play this, I will be playing it on my laptop I recently installed fucking Linux on, because
yeah,
genuinely it is a better experience on Linux, and that is not a joke.
yeah. You can cap the frame rate because there's no frame limiter as well in game, and there's no VSync as well. And like I was shocked at how bad the shadows look. Like I usually like if you've read any of my Steam Deck articles, I usually turn shadows to the lowest because they tank performance. So I'm okay with that. But over here, it was just flickering all over the place, regardless of what setting I was using. And apparently, that's an issue even on my friend's PC, and he has a 5080. So I don't know what they've done with this PC release. It just feels really bad. And you have like 300 and something thousand people playing it right now on Steam.
The thing that's
So yeah.
so fucking frustrating about both the state of like Elden Ring's PC port and this is that they've shown they can make an excellent PC port. They did it with Armored Core.
Yeah.
What's their fucking problem?
I think it's really funny that like they just like did it. They just kind of almost copied and pasted the dev optimizations from Elden Ring into Night Rain. That's like, oh, call it a day.
I
Yeah,
didn't
Oh
even
yeah,
think of
it
that. It
feels like
seems obvious
no,
in hindsight, though.
yeah, it feels no lessons learned from like Armored Core. You're just like, whatever. It's
so
funny.
anyway, so when I had a code for Steam to play it over there, and I pre-ordered it on PS5 because most of my friends are playing it there. And when it unlocked for me, because I pre-ordered it on PSN over here, it unlocked about 12 hours before the US one. Like I was playing it and it felt like it ran even worse than the base game on PS5. And I was looking at the Digital Foundry video for the beta test, which they tested, and it's exactly the same. And I'm like, oh man, I should have bought this on Xbox instead. But then the problem is multiplayer focused game. I don't know anyone who's playing it on Xbox. So I'm
Also,
gonna have to just deal with this.
didn't Elden Ring itself run worse on Xbox versus PS5?
So, based on when I played it, what happened with Xbox is because VRR works for me on Xbox but not on PS5. It
Gotcha.
felt smoother there, but the problem I ended up playing more of Elden Ring on PS5 because the load times were a killer on Xbox. And in a game like this, where at least I die quite often, having near instant load times on PS5, I used to just tolerate the hitching and deal with it because Xbox is smoother, but I just could not deal with. I think it used to take like 15 or 20 seconds each time. So that's how it was before. I don't know how Night Rain is on Xbox, but yeah, I'm
No,
just dealing with it on PS5 on and off and playing it with my friends because there are a lot of people on my list who are playing that. In fact, I have people who they've made their schedule like after work to play 2 runs of Night Rain and then Fantasy Life grinding. So like that's kind of what I might
Yeah, imagine
just
if there's a modern release that just had full cross save and cross play. You know, who really,
yeah.
who could really?
genuinely, I'm just gonna say it. It's inexcusable this did not have crossplay. Inexcusable. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
like From Software is a big enough studio now that they should have made it work. And
Yeah.
I just want to mention I saw some people complaining maybe on social media like, why didn't the reviews mention the crossplay? Well, guess what? Scott
they
did.
did.
Scott did.
They
He was like, this should have crossplay. It really should have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absurd, but I mean, it's hey, it's finally bringing crazy features into Souls multiplayer, like official, not mod support. Souls multiplayer features like inviting your friends to a lobby to play multiplayer. That's a
Yeah.
huge new quality of life feature for Souls games. With Night Rain, crazy.
I think I'm gonna wait and see how this like evolves with updates, with balance fixes and all, and maybe if they actually ship the duos mode and it does not feel tacked on like the solo play, this has potential because it is getting DLC, right? The deluxe edition says new characters and bosses as part of the DLC, so I don't know how that's going to work for, like suppose I have the deluxe edition and you have the standard edition. So will it be that the host needs the DLC like how some games handle it or not? But I feel like we'll see how this is because this isn't a one and done for them. And I'm sure with like we'll get to the news in a bit, but it's already shipped like 2 million copies within a day. So it is gonna, I think they'll support it. I don't think the PC port or the like technical side of things is gonna improve, but hopefully the gameplay and the balancing improves.
Yeah, I mean, genuinely, I think it's a cool project that that a studio like From Software, as that they've always done. They're willing to like just do small experimental projects, regardless of whether they're gonna like quote unquote fail or not in the public eye. Like that studio didn't shut down after Ninja Blade, for example. Um, and they certainly had way smaller titles that weren't always financial successes. Before Demon Souls, like Echo Knight series. Not a lot of people heard of that, but they were smaller horror titles that I don't know exactly how well they did, but that From Software has never been a studio to shy away from just like taking risks and doing things they want to do, no matter what scale it is. Um, and it's cool to see that like with the success of Elden Ring, they're like, we'll try something that is still in that same world, and we already developed a billion fucking assets throughout these Souls games. So we're gonna make a remix of that in a really interesting fashion in a format that it seems like people like, and that's how they like their interpretation of the seamless co-op mod was like, oh, let's try our own spin on it, and I genuinely think that's cool. And I also really like the um Tomorrow's Saint from GameSpot, his perspective on it is when you think about Night Rain from like almost a resume perspective, where the director of it is not Miyazaki. It's the Elden Ring. I forgot their name. The Elden Ring like combat designer or battle director. Like this is their directorial debut. So now they have that experience, both pros and cons of like have taking up this directorial role. This release is important to them and to that studio because From Software is thinking about way down the road of training their juniors because Miyazaki won't always be there. Like eventually Miyazaki will retire, and a lot of like the old heads from Software, the much more experienced veterans, will retire. They need to continue thinking about the next generation of developers to keep that studio moving forward and continue to develop games on that end. And I think that's a really smart perspective to think about this game.
Kind of reminds me also like of Wolong being junior
Yeah.
developers for that studio.
Mhm.
Or in the opposite, how like 4 of the 5 producers of Mario Wonder were the same as Super Mario Bros. Like Nintendo just like holds on to them forever.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
crazy retention rate. But yeah, but I imagine also from Nintendo's end, they also have like are training up the next junior developers for the next generation, obviously for
Well, like I believe that was not in really our wheelhouse, but Splatoon was, if I
yeah.
recall correctly, a bunch of their like younger, up and coming producers and
Mhm.
artists.
I remember that. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think I can respect it from that one. Like I don't know exactly if I'm gonna have time to get around to Night Rain. It's just like it kind of fell into this
Too
weird.
many games.
It fell into this weird hole where like I'm really enjoying my time in Fantasy Life and kind of chipping away still at 100 line like here and there,
Yeah.
and
There's nothing important happening next week or anything like that.
yeah, and then I
Nothing
still
at all.
exactly. And so I kind of just fell into this weird release date period where, like, hopefully, if I do have some spare time to get around to it, there'll still be a community to play with. But it's like one of those games that I'm quickly learning from people who are in my friend circle that are playing it, plus from like people who are playing it, trying to play it solo. It just seems like the game that's like it's a difficult time if you're just planning to play this solo, and you need to have like these one or two other people consistently to play it with to have a good.
Just a broad also comment. This is stepping back a little bit. I saw a little bit of discussion on social media about like, is it fair to criticize Night Rain for being like a multiplayer focused game? And my answer to that is yes. Like,
What? That's weird. Yeah, what?
I saw some people
Huh.
saying like you can't dock points for this being a multiplayer game if you weren't expecting it to be a multiplayer game, and that sort of like cynical takeaway. But my thought is, it's like just in terms of the utility, if you're a reviewer, I'm talking about reviews here. If you're a reviewer and you're just stating your experience with how is this game as a solo game playing Night Rain by yourself? Is it feasible? Is it fun? Does it work? And if your answer is no, it doesn't really work. It's not really great for that. You really should probably play this in a group. Like that's a review. That's valuable information from someone's impression of the game. Like that's my point. Is I think it is fair to state that.
A little bit of a tangent, but related is like, it's a different criticism, but I think it's in the same vein in terms of like topic. When we discussed Claire Obscure Expedition 33, how it was a deliberate choice not to add a mini map. Does that mean you can't criticize that there isn't one? No, you can say I really think there should be. It just provides extra context. And same for this, where it's just like if you primarily play single player games and you play a multiplayer game and bounce off of it, that tells someone something. If you're a multiplayer, like you love this sort of game, that review should just mean less to you. Whether if they scored it low because that reviewer didn't mesh with it, oh well. Like
Right.
that shouldn't impede your enjoyment at all.
We
So I
totally
basically
lost the
I'm just
plot about
rewording what you said.
critiquing and having personal opinions, man. It's like just let people have opinions, whether you disagree or agree. Just I don't understand, you know.
If you read a review and someone
That's
says,
crazy.
I don't think this game's multiplayer works at all, and you say you're having a blast, guess what? Neither of you are wrong. Like you can both be right.
Yeah,
I
let
think
people-
reviews have just been distorted to the point where people just want people to agree with them or on their viewpoints.
Well,
And
I think it's there's too much to chew on. We have stuff to get to, but I think it's Metacritic. People want their favorite games to have high numbers, and therefore, if numbered too low, person is wrong. And I'm painting with a broad brush there, but yeah, discussion
That's
should be a lot less lower temperature than it often is my opinion.
Yep.
So yeah, we have Scott's Elden Ring Night Rain review up on the site. We do have Mikhail, who did talk about primarily technical impressions for ROG Ally and the PC port in general. We might return to Night. I mean, we should hopefully hopefully we will return to Night Rain at some point on the podcast. Just knowing the upcoming schedule, I just can't promise exactly when. But we'll squeeze it in at some point.
You'll hear about
we do
it
have
at the end of the year, beginning of next year, with the game of the year cast. That
Yeah,
with how busy things
at the
are
very
in the
least.
Switch 2 launch, I think that is the only thing we can promise.
I think it's gonna be interesting to see how Night Rain will fare compared to Dust Bloods because both still have a prominent multiplayer component in it.
I saw
Obviously,
someone
totally different games, but it'll be interesting to see comparing, contrasting the how those projects shape up.
I saw someone that read up about like what Duskbloods is doing and like the kind of concept of it. It's like, oh my god, it's a Grail War. It's like now you have my attention.
I know, yeah, I think I also read it. Read that on the podcast too, right? Probably read that same post of like someone comparing it to a Fate Stay Night Grill War. It's like, fuck, they're right. They're totally right.
At this point, we have a lot of. I guess this is kind of actually a decent segue here. We have a few like op-eds and previews. Actually, one of these is not a preview; it's more of an opinion piece. I'll actually start with that one. Our main topic last week on the Tetracast was the recent released Fantasy Life I: The Girl Who Steals Time. So a lot of our collective impressions of that game, you can listen to last episode's podcast to hear about that. But Josh, you did also write up a feature for Fantasy Life I, not a review but just trying to get your thoughts down on paper. So just an opportunity here. I'll be honest, I haven't read it yet. But you've titled it
Okay.
"Fantasy Life is a game that wants to brighten my day."
Yeah, Fantasy Life I like it's basically giving like putting down on paper a lot of what I said on last week's podcast, where it is a game that just every time I boot it up, I just smile from beginning to end of my gameplay session with it and trying to convey that to people, maybe in ways that like maybe someone's having trouble explaining what makes this game so fun and what makes this game so special to people. Like some people found inspiration through my piece, like why didn't I ever think of like mentioning old school RuneScape to people when trying to tell them about this game and now even on our discord like me trying to explain like hey if you're into games like old school RuneScape and ff14 in terms of like leveling up your jobs that are like there's a lot of like non-combat rules you don't have everything engage in combat like this is a game that makes that process fun and it never feels super grindy on that end and I just wanted to really express like my gratitude towards it because it's definitely a bright, fun-spirited game. Because not to say that any of these the games that I mentioned in it are bad or anything, but like Clear Obscure, First Berserker Kazan, I also mentioned like Split Fiction, Hundred Line, Blade Chimera. These games have like most, if not all of them, have pretty like bleak premises. Like especially Clair Obscure, like it's a very heavy, sort of depressing game, especially from the get go, and like the whole journey is a bit sorrowful. And like I have fun playing it, but when you're thinking about the story and the characters, it's a very depressing game. Not to say that it's bad, but it's pretty depressing at many points towards it. And if Kazan, you're a berserker going to this dying world, people are just like kind of rotting left and right, and you're just trying to find the source of the madness of it all, and it's like a revenge story. It's like like I played a lot of games, like it's fun to play, but it's a pretty depressing thing, and like you know what? Fantasy Life I is one of those like few games this year that like I go play it. It's a very bright, vivid game, and it's aimed towards younger audiences, but it kind of turns that into its strength where like it's very cheerful. It's very just a very energetic game that like I'm just smiling left and right whatever I'm doing in that game. It's not a game that's trying to like get me down like in terms of like my mood and my certain attitudes or things. It's like, hey, cheer up. Let's go at it. Let's have an awesome like let's have an awesome night. It's just a game that's just like it's just fun to play, and I just wanna find a way to convey that to people as succinctly as possible. I think that was just like a personal piece for me to write down.
And I will say, on the strength of last week's argument, I did like download and install it to my Steam Deck.
Cool.
It'll be
Yeah.
like my cozy travel or right before bed game. I haven't
Nice.
started it up yet, but that was my intention.
Cool.
One of us, almost everyone on the
Well,
site
not
is now
yet, not
playing.
yet. I'm at the starting line though.
Um, when am I gonna convince people to join the Rune Factory clear?
We'll see. We'll see how Rune Factory shapes up. I'm interested to see what people think about that when the game releases.
Mhm. And then I did have a note here. I forget if this was brand new or not, but Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time will launch on the Nintendo Switch 2 on June 5th.
Yeah, and they
So
mentioned that the pricing, right, Mikhail? They showed off
yeah.
the
So
pricing.
the date was announced in the last week. They just mentioned it was coming or something like that. I think I've lost track because the game has stolen all my time. But yeah, it's $2.59 to upgrade from the Switch version to the Switch 2 edition. And they haven't said anything about a physical edition in Japan for it. I think if they do one, it'll just be a key card, which we'll get to. But yeah, if you have the Switch One version, which I bought to cover it, so the Switch One version, you just pay $2.59 and you can upgrade to the Switch 2 edition. And they posted some comparisons for the load times and some of the like the image quality. Load times are about, I think, looks like half of what it is on the Switch One, but not as fast as it is on like Steam and PlayStation 5 at least. But yeah, it seems like a good improvement, and I'm happy it's going to be at launch because this is. I already have Fantasy Life set up so that every screen at home I can play it on when I feel like it. So if I'm lazy in the living room, I can just boot it up on my Steam Deck docked over there. Or if I go into another room with my PS5, I can just play it over there. So this is definitely going to be one of the first few games I download on the Steam on the Switch too after I upgrade it. So yeah, that's coming out as a launch title now.
I have a
Oh,
request.
go for it.
Sure.
And I'm not asking this because I'm literally working on the schedule right now. Okay, I am. What are the Nintendo Switch 2 launch title RPG games that we would cover on our site?
Bravely
Then-
Default.
No, I have a list.
Cyberpunk.
I literally have a list in front of me. Tell me if I'm missing anything.
Okay.
Bravely Default, Cyberpunk, Deltarune, Kinitsugami, Rune Factory, Gardens of Azuma, the Zelda games, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Yakuza 0, Suikoden Remaster, Fantasy Life. Am I missing any? Like launch title RPGs.
I think that's it for launch day.
Unless you're counting, we should probably have. I'm sure Colin will probably do something, or I will because I'm gonna have Pokemon on me like during SGF. The Scarlet and Violet updates, like for the improved visuals, and like the Echoes of Wisdom update for the improved visuals, and hopefully switch to making it so it doesn't stutter like a
Yeah.
like a.
Yeah, those ones are a little bit tricky because like I was just counting the ones that are called like Switch 2 edition.
Yeah.
So
The ones which you're counting are like actual new SKUs versus just free updates. So I think the free updates would be their own thing. They aren't like actually new releases because like for the Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, they're actually giving you a full new way to buy the game. But for Echoes of Wisdom and Link's Awakening Remake, it's just gonna be patched for some improvements and compatibility, like how they're doing for non-RPGs like Clubhouse games and ARMS and stuff like that. So
You know the
for
game that
for the
I'm.
yeah, go ahead.
You know the game I'm most interested in trying on Switch 2. It's a Switch 1 game. Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, because I don't know if you guys remember this, but that game does
Yeah, it
not
was
actually.
a downsampled. It was a
Yeah,
downsample thing.
Yeah, so will it actually render at 1080p on the Switch 2 screen? I'm gonna check that. I'm curious because if it does, that'd be awesome. But
So back to
Yeah, the
Adam's question here. So
no
I'm
more.
thinking, I'm thinking, are these all the releases that have like I guess a new store page for their Switch 2 version?
well, some of these don't yet. Like I don't think Fantasy Life has a Switch 2 store page yet.
Okay. Yeah,
No.
but I know they have like a logo that they revealed that has like Nintendo Switch 2 edition. So presumably that'll be.
Yeah, it's gonna be a new SKU for sure for that. Like you can upgrade. The weird thing is they said that they aren't planning on doing a deluxe edition for the Switch 2. So they said if you want to get the deluxe edition and play it on Switch 2, buy the Switch 1 deluxe edition and do the upgrade,
Yeah.
which is
But,
a little weird.
but like I said, like lastly, like there's very, very, very little reason to get the deluxe edition. Like the primary reason you would
Yeah,
get
yeah.
is for the advanced access. Everything else is cosmetic.
Yeah.
Not really worth
Yeah.
extra price. I already lost my train of thought. I was going to ask.
No, it's just that going back to what Adam said, there are no more RPGs at launch which are relevant, or like no more RPGs
I
at
remember.
launch.
Yeah, I remember. So like this small monetary fee to go from Switch 1 to Switch 2. Like I feel like this fee is almost like it would have been offered for free, but for some reason This is all speculation. I have no idea. But I just feel like because the fee is so small, I wonder if it's like they wanted to offer it for free, but there's some policy or contract where they have to charge like a minimum amount for this. Is there any sort of like
It's a Japan thing. So the way
Okay.
it works is that if a game was announced and was available for pre-order before an upgraded version was announced, like you've seen it happen with like a great example is when when Chrono Kiseki came out on PS5 in Japan, it was not a free upgrade. It was a 100 yen upgrade. That's because technically, because of some weird Japanese law, if the PS5, like if an upgraded version of a game releases after someone could have already purchased the original version, the upgrade cannot be free. It has to be something that you charge for because it's technically changing the contract for what you bought after the fact, which they can't do, which is why you have to charge a fee. So what's probably happening with Fantasy Life I is since the Switch 2 version was literally just announced after people could have bought the Switch 1 version, they were not able to make it free. And because it's consistent with everything else the Level 5's been doing with this release, they've just been focusing on Japan first and everything else is secondary.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I think it's still not consistent with what to expect with this stuff because, like Deltarune, if you buy the Switch 1 version, you get the Switch 2 version free, or if you buy the Switch 2 version, you get the Switch 1 version free. But it's not the same as how it is on PlayStation or Xbox with like like a single purchase just downloads both. From what I read, it's like you'll be able to claim the other one at 100% discount on the eShop when you buy one of them. So that's like one possibility. The other possibility is like Raido Remastered or like Sonic Shadow Generations, where it's just a completely different thing with no upgrade. So you have to buy those separately. And then there's Suikoden also, which has no upgrade path. But then there's other stuff like Civilization 7, where if you buy the Switch version, you can pay $10 and upgrade to the Switch 2 edition. And then that's obviously what's happening with Rune Factory and the Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar release as well. So I feel like maybe after the launch window is done, things will start getting more consistent with these upgrades because right now it feels like it's not being handled as well as it was handled on PlayStation and Xbox with cross-generation stuff.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
And I didn't mention Raito in my list because that's technically not launch. That's like just a little bit after launch.
Yeah, yeah. There was some confusion about that because the Sega Asia website said it's going to be a launch title, but then what some people didn't realize is the Switch 2 is launching a bit later over there. So it will be a launch title by the time the Switch 2 comes out in those regions. So, yeah.
This is kind of staying on the Switch 2 kind of focus, which of course we have that a week before it launches, but also going into James's finishing off his preview opportunities. This is a combination of a preview and news. The news portion is that Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D will be releasing on October 30th, so we got a date for it, and it'll be coming to the Switch 2. And
Yep.
James, you had the opportunity to see these games.
Yes,
Obviously,
I
we had
did.
Dragon Quest 3 last year, and then 1 and 2 were already known about for this year. So now we have the date. But I'll just hand it off to you to talk about your experience with going hands-on with 1 and 2 remasters.
Yep. So like I said in my preview, it was always kind of like an open question how they were going to handle this. I feel like pretty much everyone knew that if they just had it be a super faithful like remake of both of these games, that it would just be too little. But also, if they went crazy with it, it wouldn't necessarily be Dragon Quest 1 and 2 as most people remember them. But yeah, like these remakes are very much reimaginings. They're pretty heavily like reimagining how things work. There's way more story in both Dragon Quest 1 and Dragon Quest 2. One example I gave in my preview was that like literally you have like in a dungeon, you have a whole separate like side plot with these other adventurers that was just not in the original, not even close. And then like your adventuring party into like they actually interact with each other a lot more from what I saw. I'm being careful of what I talk about because there's some other things I do know that I can't really say yet, but what I can just say is that we know that like at least Dragon Quest 2 HD 2D is going to have new stuff because of like that Atlas girl they added that we don't know anything about. So in that sense, I can say that there's new content in these. I just don't know what I can say beyond that.
So the take a step back, like for people who don't like remember or know exactly like about Dragon Quest One, especially where that is a very when it first came out many years ago, it is a very like from today's modern standards a very basic RPG. It was a very important release from the time because it kind of introduced a lot of people to this new genre of like turn-based battles and like having this whole command-based like battle system. But in that game, you only had one party member, and as you mentioned, James, in the original release of this, it was one party member versus one monster at a time in battles. But now in this upcoming new HD 2D remake of One, you still have that solo party member. But unlike every other re-release of it and the original release, you are fighting against multiple monsters with this solo party member now, which is like it seems like a small thing to think about, but for people who played that game and for a lot of people, very foundational game throughout their whole gaming career, whether it's playing or making games, it's it's kind of a big shift of like going against one versus like multiple enemies now because now enemies have multiple turns against you to take actions against you. So and you mentioned in your preview that they had to kind of rebalance the entire game with this thing in mind of like having to really buff up that solo party member,
People are
that
gonna
solo
make
hero.
people are gonna make jokes about how like Solo is now like a Doom guy, but as an RPG protagonist.
Just get a chainsaw on him. But yeah, I think that's a really fascinating even though it sounds small on paper, that has like big gameplay ramifications. Like,
Yeah,
okay, what do some of these combat encounter designs look like later in the game? Now that they're allowing multiple enemies, and
and
how
I'm
will
and
you
I'm
have to build that character?
yeah, and I'm glad they're doing like these rebalancings. And like I said, like the fact that they have way more of a story focus in two also kind of solves one of the main issues with it, where it's like, I don't know where the fuck I'm going, dude. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, Dragon Quest II is very much to kind of get more bang for your buck. It was a very sort of like wandering. I wouldn't say aimless game, but it was definitely encouraging a lot of wandering. And throughout some points of that game, there are definitely some encounters, mandatory encounters that expect you to grind for that encounter because the statistical imbalance just made it either very difficult to borderline impossible to get through some of those bosses because it expects you to grind for those stats, for those level ups.
Can I rephrase that a little bit? I don't think it's
Go for it.
necessarily expected you to grind. It was like expected you to get lost and
Sure,
probably
yeah.
have fought so
Yeah.
many extra battles um, as you
Yeah,
find
you're
your
right.
way. Versus if you're following a walkthrough in the modern day, you're going to be fighting much fewer battles, and the balancing is kind of weird, you know. So
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
I'm just rephrasing basically your point. Like it wasn't. It was the way the game was designed when it was originally released in the late '80s or whatever.
The intended way you're playing, the grinding was a byproduct of the intended way
Of
that you
getting
were
lost,
playing that
yes,
game.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I'm super excited to see what they do. Like I said, I mean, no, they were between a rock and a hard place, and like going the reimagining route is absolutely the way they should have done. And I'm glad that's how they're doing it because the original still exists. They're accessible, eh, well, only on Switch right now, but it's like they're accessible enough. You can play them. They've been preserved. So if you want to play the original games or like the Super like Famicom versions, it's like, yeah, they're there. You can play it that way. But for a full remake, they needed to go like this route, and I'm glad that they understood that.
They're also on mobile, the
Yeah,
1 and 2,
yeah,
and actually all of them except 7 are in English
yeah.
from 1 to 8.
I'm trying to think like if they continue to do this, do they bundle 4 and 5 together? I think that would be too much. The five
No,
is
you can't bundle 4 and 5.
yeah.
Those are
I'm
standalone
just thinking of
games.
1 and 2 because they did 1 and 2 together. I'm like, can they do 4 and 5?
Man, if they do HD
Yeah.
remaster or HD 2D remakes of 4, 5, and 6, man,
Well, if they do that, we won't have to worry about Square Enix's financials.
yeah.
I wonder what if in the hypothetical future they ever get to like 8, what did they do about 8? Because 8 was developed externally. That was level 5.
Well, level 5 will still be around by then, presumably.
I know, but it was also a shift to 3D with that.
And
With
also,
that
you
as
got the
well.
PS2 version and the 3DS version, and they each
Yeah.
have their advantages. So,
Yeah, 8 is an interesting question if they ever get. Tell you, man, Dragon, and like I'm saying, if they somehow if they ever get to Dragon Quest 5 and this HD2D remake, and they somehow pull it off and everything is right, it'll be like one of the greatest games ever, bar none. It has that potential. 5 is so good.
They could use that movie or the live action
No,
thing as
don't get away. If you don't acknowledge that movie never existed, what are you talking about?
It's like when they did the MGS3, the pachinko, those cutscenes, people kept saying, "Oh, I want a remake using this." Like they're finally doing a remake. It'll be like that.
Yeah. Dude, those cutscenes were wild. I love them.
And then James, you also had one other preview that you put up in the last week for a game that we talked about last week, or
Yep.
either one of the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. So Sega had like a preview event for Persona 5 The Phantom X. I got to play several hours of it. Got to have a like group Q&A with some of the team, which had some very illuminating answers. I'll say that much. Man, that game is weird. Like the way they phrased it is that when they developed it, they didn't want it to just be a spin-off, but rather it's like we're making Persona 5 again. This is like an alternate, like if we had made Persona 5, but it was meant to be like on mobile, this is what it would have been. And it's like that's probably fluff. But it's like, man, there's some really weird things in how that game plays. First off, there's way too many currencies. And like I wasn't the only one that felt that way. So it's like, and I don't know if we talked about this during the podcast a few weeks ago, but there was like an image going around where people compared the like leveling up a social link in the original like Asian release, and then what was shown in a Japanese live stream, and there was changes to the currency that was given.
So yeah, to contextualize this, so first off, Persona 5: The Phantom X is definitely like it is a mobile is a game that has mobile in mind, that does have a gacha system for your characters and their signature weapons. And a lot of like the gameplay flow that you're mentioning, James, is very much emblematic of like modern mobile games these days, where they have a lot of currencies because like you get like your income currency for pulls, you get the in-game currency like if you're buying from shops in that game, and then like when you pull, sometimes you'll get currency back because that's the pity system for that game. So when you pull a certain amount of times, you get currency back and use that currency to like engage with the pity system essentially in that game, like buy the characters outright. So there's like some currency you get from putting currency in. So in some cases, there might be a separate currency for like another 2 to 3 auxiliary systems that drive a central gameplay loop. For what we were talking about behind the scenes is a lot of, like, much like other mobile games these days, whenever you engage in a certain activity in those games, like say you see a story cutscene or you finish like a battle, you'll gain a little bit of like currency for the pulls that you're doing. So let's say like you get like 80 diamonds for seeing a story cutscene, and you get like 30 diamonds for doing like a mandatory story battle, and those like slowly accumulate to eventually get you pools for either weapons or characters that you can use them for. So some people, like in these games, do not spend a cent at all. They want to only use the resources that you get from playing the game for pulling those characters or weapons. So when you're in Persona 5, when you're leveling up social links with the confidants in that game, usually you gain like a gameplay benefit. For some confidants, you might make the weapon stores prices cheaper and whatever. So in this game, it's similar to that way where you uh can engage with confidants, establish confidants, and have these social link level ups and relationships and stuff. But also, when you're seeing those events, those social link events, you'll also gain currency for those pools. So there was a disparity between like one of the screenshots or trailers they showed off this screen, and people noticed right away, like the eagle-eyed people that played the Chinese release versus what is coming global to global territories, um, is that there's like at least like 30 less currency that you get from these social link events compared to the other releases of that game, which is a major red flag already for people in this space, because that's the first indication that like if this is actually pushed to like the live game, that means the overall currency gain for those pools, it has been decreased then. And if you start piling that on, like making a mountain out of like an anthill, because those things will add up,
And this
that
isn't an
means
insignificant change. It went
yeah.
from 80 to 50. That's like almost halved.
Yeah, and so that means that like in the end, if you're able to add up all these totals, that means like the overall income currency pool, if you're to add everything up together, that means you're missing out on like, dozens, if not like,
Yeah.
like 50 to 60 rounds of like maybe free pools.
And to be
Um,
clear, they understood like they were very because I asked about this at the group Q&A, even though obviously it was like a very tough question. And like they knew that people were talking about this because I didn't even say like where I saw it or what was going around. I just said, hey, like I was very vague about like
yeah, I
where
gave
I
you the
saw it.
heads up because people are talking about it. I was like, yeah, you need
And
to
then they
get
said,
track
well,
of this.
and then they said the image in question, it's like, oh, they knew that someone was gonna ask. They knew that was someone was gonna ask, which
Mhm.
tells me that people in Japan are making a much bigger deal about this than people
Oh
in the West
yeah, I
probably.
imagine. I imagine. So what was the answer to that?
Uh a non-answer. They said, "Oh well, you see, there's a lot of new quality of life features that have changed with the global release versus the original release. So we wanted to ensure that we rebalanced it so it felt the same as the Chinese release." And then somebody else asked, "Has there been any changes to the monetization from the original release to this one?" And they dodged the question.
Of course.
They gave an
Of
answer,
course.
but it had nothing to do with that question. So it's like those two things together. It's like Sega, I'm
mm,
sorry, you understand how that reads to people in the room, and it wasn't just me asking those questions. Thank God, like other people like picked up picked up what I was putting down and like also started asking some like rough questions. But it's like, come on, people are not stupid.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very like if this is like an emerging market that like is like the first of its kind, maybe people would be less, knowledgeable at that front. But we've had exposure to this for quite a handful of years now. People are very privy to what are good and bad business practices in
And
this industry in that space.
and to be clear, like even with the obvious reused assets, this is not a cheap game. I can tell
Oh,
you right now,
definitely
there
not.
is a lot of like animated cutscenes, like them saying, "Oh, we want this to be like another like version of Persona 5." I believe it. It feels like the budget was insane. Like all the bespoke animations for like the owl dude, like and some of it's cute. Some of it's really cute. Like the one where it's like he tries to get the protagonist, who I actually know the official name of that, but I can't share it.
Like
Tries
the
to
code
get
name is like Wander or whatever, something like that.
yeah. But tries to get their attention like in school. So fucking like there's a whole animation where they're holding a paper that says "Go to the roof." And they just bump into the window, and they're like, "What the fuck?" And their whole like, there's like a bespoke animation for all of that. It's like, man, it's it seems like a neat game, but like I said, when it came to like Honkai Star Rail, I've tried to give gotcha games a try. But for me, it's just I cannot get over the stink that the whole like gotcha
Oh
system
yeah,
like
for sure.
feels to me. And it's like
Understandable.
if this game did not have a gotcha system, I would play it because it seems interesting, even though like some of the stuff that they reuse from Persona 5, which actually that's the elephant in the room. This has nothing to do with Persona 5 story, as far as I can tell.
Oh
Nothing.
yeah, it's like an alternate universe, so they're retelling it, but like with a new crew, new like new cast of characters, new plot lines.
Yeah,
Mikhail, wait, sorry, uh, Mikhail, what did you want to say?
So I know this is going to launch in Japan and parts of the West. I don't think it's launching worldwide because it's not launching in Asia, a lot of parts of Asia. But what I wanted to know is obviously the Chinese release is way ahead. It has like collabs with Persona 3 Reload and stuff. But is the other servers going to be?
Before you get like it is gonna launch in Southeast Asia, but it's under a different publisher. Like there's
Oh, okay.
pre-registration pages for those territories, but it's just under a different
Okay,
distributor in
because
those.
I couldn't find them on the App Store. But yeah, so I was curious, is the server, are the servers going to be shared between Japan and the West?
I
Do we know
doubt
that?
it. So I think Japanese and like the English release that we're getting are going to be shared.
Yeah, I think the Japan and the English release are going to be shared because there's not going to be a dub. It's only going to be Japanese audio.
Here you
They
go, Mikhail. It's under IW Play World for those Southeast Asia
Okay.
territories.
So yeah, the reason I asked that is because usually when you have a gacha which comes out outside Japan and it's different servers, it's usually just a timer ticking for when it's going to be end of service. That's how it's been for the last few years. So maybe if this is sharing servers with Japan, there's a chance it'll last longer. At least that's the hope.
assuming Japan doesn't just boycott it over the changes to the currency.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, yeah, they've definitely had a lot of situations like that. I know the SMT DX2 Liberation is pretty much like hanging by a thread. The English releases because it's with the merge with the Japanese servers there. I think um, Octopath Traveler kind of had a similar situation where it kind of changed hands to merge with another territory's release schedule. So they're now handling that end of it to kind of extend the lifespan of it.
Did they ever
On that
fix the
end.
issues with that game's English localization
I have
since the
no
Switch?
idea. I have no idea. I didn't follow up.
The fact that they
Real
even
quick.
responded to it means that they probably I don't fucking know. It's a
But
mobile
that's
game.
the fate of all of these games. It doesn't matter. It could be Genshin, it could be Honkai Star Rail, it could be Brand Blue, Fate Runner. That's the fate of all these games. All of them will end of service one day. They all have a limited lifespan. They'll all shut down one day by virtue of how they're inherently designed and ran when they're no longer profitable, which is an inevitability.
Yeah, at least
Uh,
with MMOs, people will make private servers. Like people will make 14 private servers by the time that an end of service gets announced. And like even then, that's going to be decades from now. 11 is
yeah,
still getting active support.
there are private servers that do happen for some of these games. Definitely not all of them, but like
Wasn't
Dragalia
there
Lost,
one
for
for
example.
Dragolia?
Yeah, yeah, but there's definitely when the community comes together and figures it out after much time and effort, like thankless effort, really. Um, some private servers do emerge from some of these games, but it's just like, yeah, I understand where James is coming from, or like it's just the business model and the way that these games are designed, because these games are designed like as a service, as they're meant to be logged in every day, do your dailies, gradually make progress, not just in the one big gameplay session, but like something that you'll run out of like stamina resources, and you'll have to come back the next day when that's all filled up again to go do that and make gradual incremental progression to your roster, and that's not something that's you know a lot of people will not jive with, and that's totally understandable. Get it? Um, it's just I have no idea how this is gonna do. I don't know exactly what the I still it's still hard for me to kind of get a reading in the wind of like how what the general sentiment and what people will be loud and about their support, but when it comes to like what the financials are on this game, that's when it's really gonna show. Like, does this game have legs, and how
I
long are
think
those legs?
I think the fact that they're not doing an English dub is like it's not showing much faith in it because Persona games have like they live with their dubs. I think before P5, which had like free DLC for the Japanese voices, everyone just knows the series because of the English dubs in the West, and P5 itself has had everything dubbed, so not having a dub here is a little disappointing.
I
And
really
then all,
wonder because there's a really a big, I guess, crisis in that front. Especially you hear it most out of like the Hoyo games where the SAG after
yeah,
strikes have been having like a
oh yeah,
very
that's a
uh,
good point.
they've been having a very inconsistent like schedule on like what if they're even gonna have English voiceovers for some characters.
Oh
Some of
yeah, and they've been
some of those characters are
recasting people.
replaced. Yeah,
Yeah, and there's like the entire like Hoyoverse like fan base has just become absolutely toxic to English voice actors because of like the strike. And it's
right.
like if I was ever going to return to Honkai Star Rail, which was already very unlikely, I am not doing that now because Hoyoverse knows what they're doing. They could clamp down on like the actions people are doing towards those voice actors, and they're not. And and the silence speaks fucking volumes.
Yeah, it's rough, you know. It's a really kind of nasty situation. Like let's think about if I were to reinstall Honkai Star Rail now, if I don't even know what language I played that in, but if I played that in English dub, even the main characters, you know, their voices have changed already.
Yeah, and the funny thing
And
is
that's
that
crazy.
when I played Honkai, I didn't even use the English dub because it's like it's a Chinese developed game. I'm going to use the Chinese audio track.
Yeah,
But
so.
yeah,
It's yeah, so and I guess that's kind of I imagine that is a factor in why Persona 5 The Phantom X doesn't have an English dub because maybe they kind of want to sidestep that whole situation entirely. Um, you know, it's crazy. It's a very it's a very profitable market in some aspect, but it's a very turbulent, borderline violent market in some aspects too. There's so many factors that go into it.
There's also the Persona 5 gacha curse so that any game that does a collab with P5 usually has end of service like a year later. So
I mean,
is
that's
P5
just like yeah, that's like you know that's a long running joke, and it's like it's a stupid myth because like if that was the case, oh, Grand Blue would have shut down. But it's just I see it that fun image, but it's definitely not an indicator of whether a game will shut down or not. It is a funny trend, but not necessarily. You know, it's like a it's something that MythBusters would definitely bust on that end.
that would be something.
Yeah, but it's yeah, it's coming out in less than a month. Yeah,
yeah.
this game. So
Same day as
most
Uma
definitely.
Musume.
Yeah, definitely the Clash of the Titans there, um, along with any other obviously standard release that's coming out that week. So it's gonna be interesting to see how these not only just Persona 5 The Phantom X, but also Uma Musume. Uma Musume has we're not gonna cover it, but that has its own set of like unique, significant challenges that it faces too.
Yeah.
So I'll be keeping an eye out to see
Well,
how they
you know
go.
what? I'm kind of rooting for Uma Musume because of how funny they got with the marketing. Like the fact that they literally sponsored people at like certain
The Kentucky
outlets
Derby.
to Kentucky Derby. Yeah,
Yeah,
like I saw like Roland Bishop, who's like one of the editors at Games Radar I've worked with. Like literally, he was paid to go to the Kentucky Derby, and there was like a room that they had to watch the Kentucky Derby that was all just Uma Musume inspired. And it's like, you know what? If you're going to do something like that, have fun with it. Like seriously, that even if I don't like mobile games, it shows me that at least they have a sense of humor. Like, thank God.
yeah, yeah. You have really interesting like cross promoting markets at that end. Like I remember when they did the collaboration with like some Hololive VTubers for the Dodgers stadium and Dodger game. They
Yeah.
actually showed up at that game on
Or
the
like the
screen.
fact that fucking like Death Stranding 2 is going to have
The Pecora, yeah,
yeah.
that's. It felt like it was like inevitable once Kojima started mentioning her. It's like, oh, she's definitely gonna be in Death Stranding 2 then. Um,
Oh
it's wild.
God. Oh
It's
God.
wild.
That's the same day as Death Stranding 2. I'm not
Oh,
gonna
these releases. That's funny.
And System Shock 2.
Who cares about those games? I'm going to be playing System Shock.
That's right. Real ones are playing System Shock
I
too.
have my pre-order ready for Death Stranding 2. I don't know if I'm gonna have time to finish my Death Stranding 1 playthrough, and I'm terrified of Death Stranding 2 when all indications are it's longer than Death Stranding 1. That game was like 70 hours long.
Yeah, that was a big game. It's gonna be a wild week of. If
Could
you're
just play
interested in genre
Fantasy
of
Light.
game, it'll be coming out that week.
There's been multiple people in games media I've said that have been posting stuff on Blue Sky. It's like, why are you writing like you're it's a will, and it's like, because it is.
So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
anyway, next thing on the docket.
This next one is from Mikhail. It's another interview that he's done. This is with Marvelous USA CEO Ken Berry, specifically talking about the Switch 2. So again, Switch 2 related news piece here. Their upcoming games for that: Story of Seasons, Grand Bazaar, the remake, and Guardians of Azuma, the new Rune Factor game, kind of stand out in the crowd for being two titles that are physical and not game key cards. And that was kind of like the center point of this interview. So, Mikhail, just kind of talk us through
So
your discussion with Ken and specifically the Switch 2 and whatever else like you took away from being able to
yeah.
talk with him.
So, like before coming on RPG site, I like on Touch Arcade, I've been doing this thing where at the end of the year, when we used to do the Game of the Year stuff, I used to do the like a best Nintendo Switch physical releases top 10 thing, and it used to always be like Exceed, Marvelous, NIS America, like most of their games, because they Exceed specifically in North America, they have been doing. Like since the 3DS time, they include like a poster or like manuals, color booklets, and
Unless
stuff.
they were Vita games, because Sony straight up told them, please don't have manuals. Ignore the fact that Marvelous Japan's Vita releases had manuals. Like what was the name of the one? It was that tactical RPG that had like a sing theme. I forget it. That was one. EVT, which this is the second time we mentioned it in this podcast, also had a manual. It's like
Wasn't Orishika, right? Or am I thinking of a different game?
not Orishika. God, I have it on my shelf. I could literally just walk by and like check right now and see what it is.
Yeah,
But
don't worry about it. Yeah, don't worry
yeah.
about it.
Point being,
Yes.
they've been good about like having manuals, except with the exception of when Sony asked them to not do manuals on Vita, and it's like a lot of good that did them when they screwed them over with Senran and Kagura.
So yeah, like on the 3DS, if you remember, the 3DS game cases had these like square holes in North America. So they got creative with that and put like character faces behind them and stuff. And I noticed this when I like bought, I forget which was the first 3DS game of theirs I bought, but yeah, I've been pretty impressed with how they handle that. And when the switch to when the third party game started getting announced and everything was like a game key card except for Cyberpunk, and then Marvelous confirmed this was a thing. I was like, I want to figure out how they are justifying this financially, and like I thought it would be a good chance to talk to Marvelous and Exceed's CEO Ken Berry about this. So
So did you just like
was
reach out on like
yeah, I
LinkedIn
did.
or?
I just did. No. I just reached out directly to their PR and said, I want to do this, like, if it's
That's really
possible
cool.
before
Yeah.
the launch. Yeah, so sent over some questions. Didn't get everything answered, but yeah, got most of the important stuff answered. And yeah, they basically confirmed that they were able to financially justify this with the $10 upcharge on the Switch 2 version, because like there've been rumors here and there that the only cartridges available to like publishers is either a game key card or a 64 GB cartridge, which is what Cyberpunk, uh Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion, which is not directly in our purview, but I think Josh will do something around that. Story of Seasons, Grand Bazaar, and Rune Factory, Guardians of Azuma. These, I think, are the only non-Nintendo games which are getting proper physical releases. So
Yeah.
that was like the focus here, because and also that Rune Factory is a launch title for them, which they've never done, I think, in the West, having a console launch title like behind the scenes, dealing with, production delays, and they've also been hit with delays with like I think the
Because of
tariffs for the
terrorists.
collector's editions for Rune Factory and stuff like that. So that was basically the focus, just to highlight this, because I know a lot of people, including like I think James and Cullen and myself on the site, are also doing this. That with the Switch 2, we're buying Cyberpunk and Rune Factory physically. So that seems to be something which a lot of physical like collectors and buyers are doing. So I thought that was something good, and a lot of people were very happy to see this with them. And At least it was doing really well on social. I think got like a lot of people were saying, "Oh, very glad to see this." And there's one unfortunate thing which has happened that now that the game is, like Switch 2 is what 5 days or 6 days away now. There have been stores which have been getting copies of the games early. And Rune Factory, going by some posts on Reddit, at least it does have the Switch 2 edition does have a booklet or a manual in North America, but not in Europe, which is something which has happened with some Switch 1 games from Marvelous as well, like Rune Factory 5, and I think some of the Story of Seasons things. The US and Canadian releases have like full reversible cover and booklet and stuff, but for some reason not in Europe because, like, I guess Marvelous Europe doesn't want to do those for
Oh,
whatever reason.
reversible
So
cover. Thank fucking God if it means I don't have to see that stupid text at the bottom of the box art.
So I don't know exactly for this yet because it's just, like Reddit photos which are
Yeah.
offhand, but I think we'll get to know soon whether those things are there or not. Because even Cyberpunk 2077, they've been posting some pictures of the physical edition, and that's like definitely an exciting release for like collectors because that's again like what they did for The Witcher, where they sprung for the more expensive cartridge and said, here's the full game, you don't have to download except for like small updates. So that was the main angle for this interview, that let's see how they're justifying it. And he also said that it might not make sense for them to do a full physical release for like budget titles for like 40 or something like that, like for the indies, because right now they've done they do a lot of indies, like they did Sakuna, Rise and Ruin. And I think a lot of these boutique publishers, what they do is when they do physical releases for lower price titles, they'll include a lot of physical bonuses so they can justify a higher increase for the price, because you can have a game which is $20 digitally, but the physical will be $40. Like NIS America does that as well for, I think, Void, Terrarium, and some of those titles. Like I forgot the other one they did. They've had these some NIS titles which never made it to PC, and they were just on PlayStation and Switch. Like a lot of them, like
Poison Control.
yeah, stuff like
That
that.
game sucks.
Yeah, that's a good one. They usually increase.
And I
But
know at least some of you listen to this podcast. Where's Mad Rat Dead on PC, damn it.
yeah, that I love that game. So for some of these things where the digital version will be a bit cheaper, but then they'll give you some bonus content with the physical. So it kind of makes sense, but I don't know how it's gonna work out for on Switch too, because you have so many indie games which got physical releases on Switch. And I know people who played the games on Steam, but they wanted to buy a physical, so they just bought the Switch edition to collect. I don't think they're gonna do that with a key card release. Like there's a common friend of James and I who like he buys a lot of stuff on Switch, but he's just not buying anything which is a game key card now. So I wonder how that
Same.
works out long term for them. So yeah, we'll
Yeah,
see how that goes.
My plan to get Bravely Default is I'm gonna buy Japanese eShop credit on Amazon Japan and get Bravely Default on the Japanese eShop. And then I'll
Yeah.
probably see what else I'm gonna get from that way, because it's gonna be cheaper. Because if it's gonna be digital anyways, it doesn't matter if I get it
Yeah.
on the Japanese or US eShop, and they're gonna be in English anyways. And even if they aren't,
Yeah.
not a problem for me. So,
Yeah, it's gonna be difficult to navigate this as time goes on because you can only imagine that unfortunately game key cards are just gonna be more and more prevalent. It's gonna all the best to people to try and hold out and support those titles that are actually gonna make that commitment to uh, release the
like not
entire game data on cartridge on these game cartridges.
not to be like overly like an activist, but if you really want to make sure that more of these non-game key cards release, you need to buy Cyberpunk and Rune Factory. Like it is.
I can buy what you want to buy. I'm not gonna tell people to do what they want.
I
how they
know, I
pay their
know, I
money.
know.
If you would like to show support and you have the means to do so, please consider it.
Yeah. I mean, even in the interview that Mikhail did, like Ken says the same thing. It's like they need to see people buying it or else they can't justify it because of like the realities of it. It sucks, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the interview mentions like there's no guarantees that it's always going to be like this in the future. It's always going to be it's always going to be a case by case scenario naturally too. Because one day Exceed and Marvelous might have to do game keys depending on how everything shakes out. We'll see. Well, you don't know. It's gonna change as time goes on.
So now with that, very early into this podcast, we'll go into news. We don't actually have like a major headline this week, but we have quite a bit of news. The one thing that we kind of earmarked here as not official news, but something that we can't really talk around is multiple voice actors at this point, starting off with, I believe, Yuri Lowenthal and followed up by a few of the others.
Yeah, and followed up
Have,
like Aaron Fitzgerald and Amanda Win Lee.
yeah, they have explicitly stated on their public, social media accounts that they will not be returning for the Persona 4 remake, despite the fact that they all expressed high interest in doing so, but they were not asked to be brought back.
I think it's not very, it's not very surprising that Persona 4 remake is probably going to happen. I mean, they've more or less said that. It's also maybe not super surprising that they're going to get recast because they did that for 3, so it's not that much of a stretch that they would also do it for 4. It is sort of surprising that like these are veteran voice actors who should know their way around, NDAs and things like that. Just sort of didn't realize.
Yeah, people might be speculating this actually may be marketing.
If it's a marketing campaign, it's like one of the worst recent modern examples of a marketing campaign. If it turns out to be that way, I feel like it isn't. But it's just kind of like a weird thing because, like as you mentioned, like the returning voice actor for the Persona 3 remake was Elizabeth, I believe.
Yeah.
And yeah, so all the other casts were new voice actors, and like that was cool, And it's just kind of a weird saying that like I'm not returning for this for this remake that hasn't been announced yet, and it's like okay, I guess sure. Like that sucks definitely for people who are fans of the original voice actors and actresses. Like,
Well,
for
even if
sure.
it was, this isn't correcting you, this is adding to it, but like even if
Yeah.
it was announced, going to your social platform, let's say it was announced, but we didn't know, and then someone said, "I'm not returning." Well, actually, no, that would be fine. I'm trying to think what the context would be there. I take it back. I was gonna say maybe that would also be kind of strange, but it would be less strange
Yeah.
in that
I
sense.
mean, if the game was announced and he said, "I'm kind of disappointed I didn't get to return" or whatever,
Yeah,
like that's
that'd be
fair,
fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking of it, but yeah, it's just a different situation there. But yeah, Persona 4 remake, of course, not officially announced. Of course, we don't know anything. Of course, we're gonna have a lot of news next week at Summer Games Fest. Maybe see it.
Maybe. At least I guess this officially confirms the existence of it in some quote unquote official unofficial capacity.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a weird thing. Like Yuri Lowenthal was like the catalyst for other original voice actors to spring onto their social media and do this. And I don't know, like a weird domino effect. Like I just don't know
I
why
do
you would
like
do this. Period.
And like I said, these are like veteran voice actors. Yuri Lowenthal's been doing this forever. Yeah.
maybe Yuri's like, whatever, I've been at this long enough. YOLO. I don't know. I'll just say
Yeah.
it. Well, what's the worst that could happen?
If it does turn out to be a marketing campaign of some sort, it's really a really bad one. I will just put it up front.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's just like I saw speculation because it's like, why else would all these fucking people? Yeah.
Well, we'll have more context next week or whenever it's officially announced. But yeah, Persona 4 remake, we don't know anything. Not surprised. Like it's like all but confirmed at this point. So yeah.
I think we might see something at the Xbox show because Atlas has been announcing stuff at their shows quite a bit over the last few years, or Sega at least. So
Does
maybe,
Xbox have a thing scheduled?
yeah,
Oh yeah, they
they
do.
have
Oh yeah, they
something.
do. They do.
They're not doing an in-person thing, but they're doing a stream, so it might be there. Who
Oh yeah, I
knows?
remember because they have like an Outer Worlds 2 follow-up
Yeah.
thing. That's how I
Yeah.
remember they had a thing.
We have a few updates for some existing games. Existing, that's not the weird way to put it. For some release games that are getting continuing support from the developers or publishers. I kind of listed this one first because it's the one that I've seen the most chatter about, even though it's not a game I played. 100 Line, Last Defense Academy, of course, released in late April. Word of mouth for it has been very strong. One of the upcoming patches, specifically 1.06, is focusing on quality of life improvements. They announced the details of this before the patch came out. I believe the patch is out on PC, but not quite on Steam, on Twitch yet. And one of the things here that I believe is the headline that people are circling is that they are allowing you to skip certain battles after they've been cleared on a certain route. And I've seen some people say, "Thank God," and some people say, "Oh man." So those who
So
have played 100 line, yeah, go ahead, Josh.
yeah, I'll contextualize this. So they already allowed some of this for certain battles. Like there's the ability to skip some battles already, and they're expanding the scope of it. A lot of the chatter around this is there's a certain route where people call it the serial battle route, where throughout the if you fall into that route, you fight a lot of battles if you happen to be on this route, like almost every single day, and a lot of them are very very repetitive. Um, and this new update allows you to skip like one like the kind of the grunt waves, uh, to allow you to get to the boss wave. But usually, how battles are designed in this game is like when you're defending the academy, you're first like doing like two to three waves worth of like grunts until like the boss battle shows up and to finally wrap up that fight. So presumably this I haven't really seen it for myself yet, but this new update allows you to like skip those grunt waves to this boss battle wave, which cuts out a lot of that like kind of tedium.
That
But for
sucks.
for some people, like they lament it because like that's kind of the
That was the
point
whole
of
point.
yeah
Yeah.
the point of that route is like living through Takumi's like kind of nightmare of like, oh man, this is really wearing down my sanity, of like it's just like kind of going through this over and over again. So they're kind of biting out some of the themes of that route, and I'm sure this happens affects like the thematics of like certain other routes as well through this update. So I can see why people do it like that. Once again, this is it is optional, so people can do that, but it's not forcing everyone to do that. Which I can see why, on a gameplay perspective, you're trying to do the 100 routes in a timely manner. This will cut down a good chunk of that time, but at the same time, you are kind of missing some of the thematics if because it gives you the option rather than being forced through it. So I can see that. So I've definitely heard both ways of like people are for it and against it by making this a feature that now you can like something that you can skip, giving you that
Mm.
option. Also another big thing that like the people who haven't played 100 line for an extended amount of time don't understand once again the significance of this of enabling the morning and evening chimes. So every single day in that game, you will hear ding dong bing
Bing
bong
bong.
that to signify the start of a new day in that game, and also when you're like at the midway point in that game when you're about to wrap up a day in that game, it'll always have this like 4 second black screen with white text ding dong bing bong, and then showing that like an announcement is about to be made by Sire of like just the status, like, oh, this is the 88th day, you've made it here, soldier, now go off and defeat those demonic and barbaric beasts and go at it with everything that you got. It's like kind of that morning announcement like when you're attending like elementary school.
I love the one for day 69 where the English voice actor is struggling and failing to keep a straight face.
Yeah. Yeah, some of those like announcements aren't like the same either. Like some of them are like unique for certain days, which is a nice touch to it. But it does allow you to skip the ding dong bing bong, and that drove people insane, like me insane. So I'll probably skip that because I'm like, I can't do it anymore, man. No more ding dongs and bing bongs, please. Um, but yeah, and so it is kind of a little bit of a controversial patch because of that allowing you to skip a wider range of battles to at some point you do want to accelerate your progress to see more of these like unique routes, but at the same time you kind of take away some of like Takumi's um thematics of like time looping of like suffering through these same 100 days of like just seeing how things either change or stay the same, and you're kind of taking some of the existential crisis thematics by enabling you to skip some of these battles.
Another game, I thought I had another one of the updates here. Well, this one's an update on specific platforms. So this is the game, as far as I can tell, we haven't covered it, since 2023. This is the Seven Deadly Sins Origin. It was announced in early 2023. It was, I believe, specifically focused on being a mobile title to release in 2025. They've announced this week that it will be also available on PlayStation 5 and PC in addition to its mobile versions. And then, of course, with the PC version on Steam, it's got a new Steam page and new artwork and some new like press release details on the game. So that'll be slated for this year. Do we have any Seven Deadly Sins fans on the podcast?
I like the early parts of Seven Deadly Sins. I think the later seasons of it are really bad.
Is it still going?
I think it's already wrapped up, but I don't know about I only watched like the first 2 seasons of the anime, and then after that I was like, it just turned really bad. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So I like the
I'm
the start
googling
of
this
it.
right now. Like, I just kind of feel like this has been. I feel like I heard about this like forever ago. I'm like, is there only a game just now?
No, there's been games.
There's been like a mobile game that from Netmarble as well.
Oh, okay, so the first season was 2014, and the most recent season was 2021. So it's been a few years since the last season.
Yeah. From what I remember, like they're adapting like a spin-off, I think now that's like on Netflix. Like it's like the Knights of something, and it's not like it's not the starting crew. It's like a new set of characters. I just I just don't care about it.
There are more than 100 episodes
anymore.
of this. I didn't realize it was that
Oh,
long.
Jesus, that's a lot. I think I watched
If
the first.
you're gonna watch a 100 episode anime, just watch Dragon Quest Daima.
If you're gonna watch a 100 episode anime,
Or not Dragon Quest Daima. Why did I say Daima?
Die.
The other one.
Yeah.
you should
Not
you should
Daima.
watch Legend of the Galactic Heroes.
That's what I'm talking about. I think that's the only like 100+ episode anime series I'll wholeheartedly recommend. This song is like, go watch Legend of the Galactic.
Every
That
so
is-
often, I think about the fact that I recommended my dad watch that when he was done with Game of Thrones, and he like at the beginning of the week on like Sunday, he called me saying, "Yeah, I'm started watching," and then on Friday, he was like, "Man, that was like the best anime I've ever watched." It's like, you fucking finished it.
I agree. That is, to this day, that is like my number one anime, like my most favorite anime, Legend of the Galactic Heroes. It's fucking like, I think that's like a life-changing anime for me, to be
Yeah.
honest.
And one tiny correction. It was already announced for PC and mobile, so the new update here is that it's A, specifically on Steam, and B, PlayStation 5.
Yeah, I'm interested to seeing like what the actual like game of like what players see when playing this game, what that looks like. And I'm very because Netmarble already has like the Seven Deadly Origins like mobile game that's like, it's turn based, but it's like a deck building sort of game. It's like one of those games where you combine cards for greater effects in combat. It's just like, Netmarble, not the greatest reputable, trustworthy developer and publisher, kind of has questionable, greedy monetization practices. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm very.
Adam, I kind of let you speak to this one because I know it took you all to put this together. Obviously, we're not far away at all from the release of the Bravely Default HD remaster coming out with the Switch 2. You put together like one final big like dump of information from Square Enix about this one. Any very key takeaways here? I know we talked about this game under a few different contexts ever since its announcement about what it is and what it isn't. Anything major for as we go right ahead of release?
I guess the first thing I'll say is, if people aren't aware, broadly, companies and publishers like Square Enix and sometimes Sega, sometimes they'll just like release like a media blast or dump, where it's just like, here's a bunch of information and screenshots, and do with them what you want. And that's what this is. Is basically just like 1 week before release, here's a bunch of screenshots for Bravely Default HD remaster, and also some information on like the battle system and jobs, and none of that is new, right? But it does have just some like just details on and screenshots on like the mini games, which are new, just straight from the publisher. Now James actually got to play it and wrote up a piece on it, and I did link him on it. So we already heard impressions from a person who's actually played it. But yeah, it's just basically one last chunk of information from Square Enix about the game before it releases. And we talked about this last week also. Probably the most interesting nugget of news is that one of the rewards for the mini games. So you do the mini games. There's 2 of them. You get tokens for doing them, and you can exchange those for rewards like accessories and items and consumables and whatnot. And one of the rewards that you can get are apparently accessories that allow you to change the counter rate toggle to 0% or 400%. So like basically expanding that range in that toggle window. Now, how precisely does that work? I'm not sure. Like it says it's an accessory, so you have to like equip it on a character and then allows you to change it. That seems a little weird. I'm not sure, but long story short,
400% is going to make grinding out really easy.
yeah. So, but I'm not sure like how expensive are these? Do you have to basically do all the mini games to get these, or is it an early reward? Do you have to like use an accessory slot to equip it, and then you have to like equip it and unequip it if you don't want to use it? I don't know how that's gonna work, but yeah, that's what it is. It's an accessory you get from a reward from the mini games.
You have the perfect full combo, every single song in the rhythm in a mini game. That's it. It's
Yep.
over.
But otherwise, it just goes through, some of the other classes and whatnot. If you've never played Bravely Default, sometimes I think we make the assumption that everyone's played this already. But if you haven't played it already, you can see some of the classes and stuff. It's a job-based game. It's pretty fun, mix and matching your abilities and whatnot. So it goes through some of that.
With this, we'll go on to a handful of trailers that released this week. The first 3 we kind of have bundled together. We talked over the last year how Owlcat Games, we talked about them last week when they announced the new new Warhammer 40K game. I'm actually blanking on the name.
Dark Heresy.
There it is, Dark Heresy. I'll commit that to memory. But they also announced last year that they're going to be entering the publishing space. They were publishing the games Shadow of the Road and Rue Valley. They've released new trailers for these upcoming projects as part of the OTK Games Expo event. Shadow of the Road is like an isometric tactical feudal Japan mixed with cyberpunk kind of aesthetic to it. So this trailer, like all these trailers are pretty like there's not a lot of meat on them. They're nice to see, but it's about a minute of kind of contextualized gameplay. I should say uncontextualized gameplay. So it seems fun. It kind of gives me some, Wasteland 3 vibes. Pull out that Boss Baby vibes meme if you want. But it seems fun in terms of, to me, it does seem a little bit more tactical focused than RPG focused, which so was Wasteland 3 in a lot of ways, in terms of the combat anyways. They also showed up a new trailer for Rue Valley. This one is one of those many Disco Elysium inspired games. So it has a similar art style, kind of a similar focus on like personality and storytelling, and also involves a time loop, which I guess I might have known that but forgot. But it's a time loop game, so the trailer kind of links into that to some extent. And then we also kind of linked in the same news post. They're also publishing or working to help publish Nested Lands. Not strictly an RPG, but it's like a multiplayer cooperative survival crafting game, which has a lot of the similar DNA of RPGs. So it's not out of place in that news story. So we got all those 3 trailers. They're all about a minute each. In that one news post about Owlcat Games publishing efforts. Not a trailer, but we did get some new footage for the upcoming Digimon story Time Stranger. Of course, finally announced either earlier this year, around February, for the next entry in the Digimon story sub-series. This is part of the like Terriermon like talks about the game streaming event.
Terriermon VTuber.
Yeah. So not
Terriermon's
explicitly
a
a trailer,
pervert, man. That's I gotta say it. Terriermon's a pervert. That's it.
All right, I don't have the context for that, but I believe you.
So in the gameplay footage, they shut off one of the gameplay segments shut off as like Human World and Shinjuku, and then they were playing the female protagonist. And then like within the first 10 seconds of that female protagonist walking, Terriermon's just like, look at her hips, just like kind of erotic and sexy. Is this okay for kids that they're seeing? God damn it, Terriermon. You don't have to say it. We know it.
You can think it, but not say it. So there's about I think about 10 minutes of footage here about the game. And here's one thing that I didn't know. but I believe Kite covered this for us, saying that holy shit, you can rotate the camera, which is something you couldn't do before. And I'm like, oh,
That's right.
that seems like a big change. So
Yeah, in the Cyber Sleuth games, when you're going around the real world, it was like all fixed camera angles with no camera rotation. So they made a big deal about that. Like, holy shit, 3D full camera movement in this day and age in big 2025, is such a thing possible?
but yeah, we've got a link to the YouTube kind of VOD upload for 20 minutes of the Terran event with all that footage. It also includes some new attack animations, as well as what the Digi evolution scene looks like. Digivolution. Sorry, I added a syllable there. We got an upcoming trailer for from Atlas for the upcoming Raido remastered Mystery of the Soulless Army. This one is a longer trailer. It's a combat primer. So for me, having not played either of the original two games, like I don't know if it's kind of very much details how the second game originally played, backported in the first, because I know you guys have mentioned that the combat has kind of been overhauled to look more akin to the second game. But it seems to me very much in the same Atlas mode, or in the same vein of elemental affinities playing an effect, how they impact critical hits, the passive abilities that you can store, the active abilities that you can use, and like a weapon upgrading system, which I guess come into the category of like sword, axe, or lance. I forget what the third one is, but it details all of it, and so it's a pretty thorough primer video about how the action combat works in the Raido remaster. Here's one that I had to remind myself what it was. A game that is still currently slated to release this year is called Of Ash and Steel. It is a third-person, low fantasy open world RPG inspired by the games like Gothic and The Witcher. If you don't remember this, it's the one where when they announced it, about half of the announcement trailer was like, and I say this affectionately, LARPing. It was live action with like the studio the studio personnel dressed up
I
as
vaguely
like
remember that the way you're describing it. Like, oh yeah, that was a pretty cool
yeah, that
announcement.
when
I'm trying to remember when this announcement trailer came out. There was something else that same day that totally drowned it. I'm gonna look this up. I forget what it was. Like something else much more flashy and interesting. One second, I'll get back.
well, while you look that up, so this trailer, it's in universe. It's a cartographer basically talking about the world. And I had to remind myself whether this game was first or third person because the trailer doesn't show gameplay. So I was like, oh, this kind of looks. I'm currently playing through Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is also like very low fantasy, hardly any fantasy game. They don't explicitly call Kingdom Come an inspiration. They specifically point to Witcher and Gothic. Uh, Having played Witcher but not Gothic, but I have played Elex from the same developers. They talk about a couple different factions in the game, a couple different locations. They mentioned that a lot of the kingdom is based around islands, so that's kind of a neat. I don't know if it's specifically like an archipelago, but they talk about the area Gray Shaft, deadly creatures, and this is where the fantasy comes in. They're like hellhounds of some sort, is what they look like slightly off beasts, like very deadly creatures, but not just wolves. There's something wrong with them. Uh, but this trailer is mostly flavor, and I think that's still enough for me because I'm playing Kingdom Come 2, like I said, and I'm really enjoying it. And this game kind of gives me a lot of the same vibes. I think I'm just more in a fantasy mode right now, in terms of, or not fantasy, sorry, medieval mode right now, and having another game in that space is, I think, pretty cool. Did you find out, Adam,
No,
what might have overshadowed it?
I don't. It wasn't something we covered, but I remember there was something that happened that same day that just kind of drowned it out completely when it was announced.
Unless it was like a GTA trailer or something.
What was the other game? I promise we cover RPGs. That was another kind of fantasy-ish RPG inspired by The Witcher, but it involves like vampires. It's called like Lightbringer Trilogy or something like that. Man, I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, that was like Dawn Walker, Banda Namco something.
Oh, Dawnwalker. That's what it was. Lightbringer, Dawnwalker. That's what it was. The Dawnwalker trilogy, The Blood of Dawnwalker. Good save, Adam. So that I kind of got these two games kind of conflated, but of Ash and Steel, low fantasy, Dawnwalker, vampires. There you go. So we got the new trailer for Of Ash and Steel up on the site, and it's like I said, it's very much like the game's flavor, and to me, it seems fun so far. Here's a game that we haven't covered since I believe middle of last year. Alcahest. This is a dark fantasy first-person RPG, very explicitly inspired by Kingdom Come Deliverance, specifically the first-person combat. Last year when it was announced, it was PC game, and I believe Josh, did you play this as part of the Steam demos or no? I forget if this was on your list or not.
I don't think it's just one of the ones that I played.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, but they did talk about this announcement is that it will be coming out for both PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox, as well as a new teaser trailer for it. So pretty short trailer. The main announcement here is that it is uh, coming to the consoles.
I was skimming this trailer and I was like, it needs a kick button, and then sure enough, like around 30 seconds in, there's a kick. I'm like, yes, it has a kick.
Mhm.
I figured out what I was referring to with that Ash and Steel thing. Literally at the
Mhm.
same time that trailer dropped, the Game Awards 2024 nominees were announced. And
Oh.
maybe not that flashy of a
Well.
thing, but everyone on social media was just talking about like the categories and the snubs and whatever for the
That's
Game
rough.
Awards. And like this company's trying to announce their game and no one's talking about it because everyone's talking about Game Awards, right? So last year's. So yeah, I knew there
Yeah.
was something.
And I think that's it for trailers. Not every trailer they released, but all the ones we had listed here. With that, we'll go into sales. The one that we kind of talked about earlier is that Elden Ring Night Rain, of course, just released and has shipped over 2 million copies already. So I don't think a big surprise. I think its concurrency on Steam was like 300,000. I forget if it went higher, but seems to have done very well, at least out of the gate. Here is another one that I know is kind of fun. It's a few days old now, but in the last week, the team at Sandfall Interactive announced that Claire Obscure Expedition 33, 33 days after launch, sold 3.3 million copies. And the previous update we had was 2 million copies, but so still has strong legs, a very auspicious sales milestone on a specific date. So pretty fun. Obviously, seems to be a very big success for Sandfall and Kepler.
Do you think internally it's actually sold like 3.4, 3.5, but they're like it's messing with the narrative of 33 and 3.3 and our whole 33
Part of me is
aesthetic.
like, maybe, but also,
I know
okay.
it's dumb fun either way.
So that 3.3 is probably like that's shipped and digital sales, right? So maybe they just had to like make sure that all right, we got to ship X amount of copies to retailers on this date to bump it to 3.3. Like
I love that.
if we have X many digital sales and we want to have 3.3 million, we have to ship this many units to retailers right now to hit that number.
This is canon now.
Dude, they had the craziest mathematicians and market analysis on staff for this. Like there's the one thing we need to hit. Nothing else needs to line up. There's the one metric we need to hit.
Another sales update, the Neo series from Koei Tecmo has crossed 8 million units sold worldwide.
This reminds me, I need to play Rise of the Ronin. I know that's not Neo, but same devs, right? So I need to play it.
Yeah.
Came out on PC not that long ago, really, a couple months.
Everyone's still waiting for Neo 3, the real Neo 3.
Neo 2 is the only reason I know anything about the Warring States period or the Warring period of Japan.
That's your entire basis of like when you're trying to explain this
Yeah.
on the Warring States period, you're gonna talk
Yeah.
about Neo, how the
Nobunaga and the
Neo
traitor Akechi Mitsuhide or whatever. I know all this.
there were
Yasuke was there too.
spirits, and there were that you could possess yourself with. It was fucking awesome back then, unlike today.
Man who's only played Neo. Man, this is giving me a lot of Neo vibes.
Yep.
Well, that's what Josh said about First Berserker Kazan.
That's true. Yes,
I mean,
of course.
also so is everyone else. Like,
And then also as part of like the Q1 2025 fiscal results from CD Projekt Red, they've announced that The Witcher 3 has hit 60 million units sold. At first I thought like Witcher series, no, Witcher 3. And then Phantom Liberty, the expansion to Cyberpunk, has sold 10 million copies. And Cyberpunk 2 is officially in pre-production.
Crazy.
Good luck.
Cyberpunk is probably not counting Mario Kart because like literally everyone's going to buy Mario Kart whether through the bundle or not. I would bet money that the best-selling Switch 2 game at launch is gonna be Cyberpunk. It's not like Mario
Maybe
Kart.
that would be fun. Best third party one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. That'll be interesting to see. Yeah, but I mean, incredible feat of like Witcher 3 60 million is like I can only imagine that was like a must be like unfathomable, unreachable number when that game was in development. It's like I bet you their highest expectations were certainly shattered, and they didn't think it would ever reach that number for sure.
That's
So,
like Skyrim sales.
Yeah, and it hit the 50 million number 2 years ago. So like
yeah.
on its roughly its 8th anniversary. So it just I know obviously it's in sales and stuff, right? But like it's sold 10 million units in the 9th and 10th years or of its basically on the shelves. Like that's kind of nuts. Just the legs there.
They'll
And I know
probably
it
get they'll probably get another boost if they make a native Switch 2 version too.
Yeah, imagine that's in the cards. But and
When did the PS5 and Series X versions of Witcher 3 release? They did a new physical. Was that like in the last 2 years or before that? I don't remember.
that sounds right because I remember watching a Digital Foundry video.
Probably within the last 2
I've
years, because I remember it was after the 4000 NVIDIA GPU launch.
it was
so
December 2022, so 2.5 years.
Oh,
okay.
okay, yeah, on the cusp. So yeah, I mean, and I can't even imagine what a Cyberpunk 2 looks like, man. Good luck to that team because I imagine one of their priorities for that thing is do not launch like the first Cyberpunk did.
And it's also worth mentioning that Cyberpunk 2 is primarily being developed in the US, in like their Boston studio.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So
I think it's using Unreal Engine, or is that just The Witcher 4? Which
yeah,
we
it's
know
using
of?
Unreal Engine,
oh,
Rip.
okay.
which is a damn fucking shame. But
Yeah.
Well, as long as you don't launch like the first one, maybe we can only go up from here.
they know how to make a game like that now, so hopefully that helps. So
But Unreal Engine 5 stands in their way. So
look, Unreal
the
Engine
the
5 is
pros
easy
and
to
cons.
develop for. The problem is it's going to run like terribly unless you have a top end system. Which I guess if you think about it, by the time it actually comes out, who are we kidding? NVIDIA's not going to progress the minimum spec PCs anymore. They're currently blacklisting people because they got angry, justifiably so, about the 5060 having 8 gigabytes of VRAM.
You know what? Last night I downloaded new drivers for updated drivers for a GTX 1060. It's awesome. I had to do it not through the NVIDIA app. I did it manually. I was very
I-
proud.
We're finally nearing the end of the news here. A few dates before we close up. This one is for another upcoming release, but maybe a tiny bit under the radar. The PC release of Stellar Blade, of course, is scheduled for June 11th. As of available right now is a PC demo that will carry over to the full release, so it's
Yeah.
available on Steam.
So this very reminiscent are like basically the same as like the PS5 demo that came out pre-release for that version. Two interesting bits about this is one, since it's Steam listing where it had like it was like region restricted to like out of like a bunch of territories, they lifted the region lock on this for like a lot of those territories. There's still a handful, but a good majority of them have been lifted. The region lock has been lifted from it. So good on the Shift Up and Sony for getting that sorted out quickly on that end. Two, since we were just mentioning Unreal Engine, this game smartly used Unreal Engine 4, and a lot of people seem to be very happy with its performance on PC. I've heard
Yep.
very, very positive things about this PC port
Yeah.
on there. Despite having the Nuvo on, like people are still saying, "Hey, my lower end rig can handle this just fine." So that's the power of like using Unreal Engine 4 instead of 5 on that end. So smart on the team for all the optimizations they made for
Looking
the
forward
PC port.
to Mikhail's article about how well it runs on Steam Deck and ROG Ally.
Yeah, that's gonna be exciting. So
Same here.
so yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome that they were able to get out a PC demo to show people, hey, can you if your rig can run it, their expectations are for cool.
The next one is we finally have a release date for the Front Mission 3 remake. It'll be coming out on June 26th for the Switch exclusive for now.
They AI upscaled the portraits, even though there's like full art of that in art books, and people are very upset for obvious reasons.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just I don't think anyone has had high expectations of these
It's
Front Mission
forever
remakes.
entertainment.
Yeah, it's Forever Entertainment, and then the studio that they contracted for this was Megapixel. It's just it's looking rough like the other ones, and it doesn't help that
Man,
as you mentioned and as people have pointed out, but they saw this trailer that they clearly AI upscaled those portraits in this game, and that's a real fucking criminal shame because the artist is so fucking talented.
It
Uh,
I used to like give Forever the benefit of the doubt, but it feels like at this point it's like I can't do that
I can't do
anymore.
it. No way, dude. This is.
I mean, this is like the third time in a row. Like, I think everyone who bought the first game, maybe people thought it's going to be exclusive, so buy it on Switch. And then it happened with the second game where, like, I think 6 months later, they fixed a lot of the issues and then they ported it everywhere. So your performance issues were sorted and game issues were addressed. And they're doing the same thing now for the third time. I think everyone knows by now, like, you wait at least a year before buying these.
Even that, you're just you're still kind of wary because some of them is like in this one, it's like I don't think I'll ever support this if it has AI upscaling. Hell no. Like that, and it's just there's so much. There's so much like ick around for Entertainment, especially it's not just exclusive to these Front Mission remakes. There's also the work that they did on I think the Donkey Kong Country re-release. It's like that was
Oh,
super
man.
Right,
buggy as fuck.
yeah.
Yeah. That's the one which loads, it has longer load times than the 3DS version
It's like,
on
come on, dude.
Switch.
What are we doing?
At
What are
least
we
it'll
doing?
probably run fine on a micro SD express card on Switch too.
Forever Entertainment will find a way to make it run worse and also to just set your SD Express card on fire.
Yeah. Completely unrelated. I'm pretty excited for when the Steam Deck 2 drops, and it'll be the second thing I'll own that'll support micro SD express.
Dude,
The
I can't.
first
Yeah,
being Switch 2.
I'm really looking forward to see what Valve does with that. I'm ready to get the. I didn't
Man,
make the upgrade
FSR
from the
4,
OLED
FSR
for
4,
this.
it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, I wish these Front Mission remakes were done way better, and I guess preferably from a different studio. And I hope they don't get Front Mission 4 and Front Mission 5. Like if Forever Entertainment announces Front Mission 4 and 5 remakes, I'm gonna like cry eternally really hard, especially Front Mission 5. I adored the shit out of that game, but oh man, I'll just be heartbroken if they're the ones responsible for a remaster/remake if that does get announced.
We have another indie game releasing in late August. This is Quartet, which is, let's see, it's a demo is currently available on Steam. This is being self-published by Something Classic Games, and we've got a trailer up on the site.
This is one of those games that has been on my like release list for years, probably more than 4. Like obviously indie games, oftentimes passion projects, sometimes done like, in the margins of someone's life, right? And they just take a while to make. But this is one of those games where like I kind of can be keeping tabs on it for quite a while, and just seeing like a final trailer, final release date, like regardless of the quality of the game, just like, hey, they have a final date. Like that's kind of, that's a huge milestone. Huge.
Yeah, good job making it to
Yeah.
the finish line because a lot of people don't make it to that finish line. For all the releases that we see come out, there's a innumerable amount that don't make it because somewhere throughout development, the people involved couldn't make it work out. So
So this game is like a pixel art like classic style JRPG inspired game, and it's got like the, to me when I see this looks like Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, that sort of combat like
yeah,
visual style, where you're seeing like the back of the characters sprite style versus the the enemies, and the character sprites themselves just kind of look classic Final Fantasy-ish. So that's what I think of when I see it.
there's some really nice like designs in this game. Like I look at the one in the boss fight, like the lion, snake, and bone head and dragon head all mixed together. And one of those screenshots, like man, that's a really cool design for a boss.
And the last
Yeah.
release date we have here, the last news. Oh, are we ready to go on?
Yeah, it's sorry. It's like as a little spin off from this because this was like showed off at like some stream that had like a lot of like indie JRPGs as they call it on that stream, where it's like a lot of indie studios inspired by Japanese style RPGs. Like one of them was like this crossover indie RPG called Infinite Alliance. It's going to be released for free next year for PS5, Xbox, all systems pretty much, including PC, Switch, and PS4 and Xbox One. And it's basically a free RPG that stars different heroes from other indie RPGs, like Glenn from Chained Echoes, Noah from Jack Move, and then from Quartet, Alexandra from Quartet. So it even has like characters from yet to release indie RPGs in it. And then also the villains are like a villain from Beloved Rapture, which is one of the games that we've talked about on this podcast. And like another from I guess indie RPG called Venetura. I'm not sure exactly, but it's called Infinite Alliance, and it's basically like almost a crossover of different indie RPG heroes coming together, as like this big passion project for free coming next. Also has like a character of like 8-bit adventures too and stuff. So I was like, oh, that's cool that someone's making that to like kind of celebrate like all these indie RPG developers coming together and um just celebrating their characters and hey, we're doing this.
It's kind of like an idea that I'm like, I don't know if I like it, but it seems very fun on paper. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, it also features art from Steph Cibolo from RPG Fan, who does
Nice.
freelance
Cool.
art on this sort of stuff from time to time.
Yeah, I think she did the cover for the JRPG book that a few years ago
Oh yeah.
And then the last news story that I have here in the last release date, it's a pretty big one actually. It's Pokemon Legends ZA, or I almost said Arceus. Pokemon Legends ZA is releasing on October 16th for both the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2.
Well, yeah, I
And
hope that the Switch 2 edition has a reversible cover art because
There's a lot of
Uh,
text at the bottom of that box art. Yeah.
and a QR code.
Yeah. Yes.
It was kind of funny, or I don't know if funny is the right word, but like this is like the overwhelming response to this like news bit was people showed like the cover arts, like here's the Switch version, here's the Switch 2 version. Obviously it's the same art, but everyone is like, man, the Switch 2 version just sucks in comparison because of the way it's the banner and the text and the the disclaimer. Just man,
It reminds me of I don't know if you've seen this, Mikhail, but the Switch cartridge for I think Super Robot Wars 30 or one of the Super Robot Wars, it has so much text on the cartridge because they have to list out all the mecha licenses they have in that crossover game. So it's just like littered with copyright logos and of licenses of like
Yeah,
the
it was
Korea's
T.
project or
It was
whatever.
T. It was T's
Okay, yeah.
Asia release. Yeah, I
Oh
have
yeah.
that. And I specifically I had that version imported because it looked so stupid and I was like, I have to own this. So yeah, like it's one of those, and I knew this would happen with the Pokemon thing. That's why I used the box art when I posted it because I was like, you know, the actual art they've shown and they have like it's on the press site without the logos. It looks so nice. I think all the like the art they do for the Legend series I really liked. But yeah, when I saw this, it was like,
Mhm.
what are you doing to this? Like, and also I think it wasn't confirmed when the news story went up, but they did eventually say that the at least in the UK, it's £10 more for the Switch 2 version, so that's probably how much it's going to be in the US as
Yeah.
well. And I don't know if it's confirmed that you can use a voucher on this yet, because I still have a voucher which is valid till the end of Feb 2026. So I'd like to use that on this if it's available and then
And then just get
upgrade
the
that.
yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm super excited for this. This is probably gonna be my well no, Death Stranding 2 might be it, but it's like this is like I really loved Legends Arceus and I'm liking what I'm seeing of this, so I'm pretty
I'm
excited.
pretty stoked that this will probably have like great performance on Switch too. It's looking like
They showed it at a higher than 1080p resolution and 60 FPS on
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a stream, so it's like
I almost had a
if
heart attack. I'm like, are
yeah,
you okay?
if I wasn't already getting a Switch 2 because of gestures everywhere, I would have sold me on it because it's like a Pokemon game at a good frame rate and resolution? Is that allowed?
I think
Haven't
that's
seen
like
that.
what Alex and Adam said for, was it Metroid Prime 4 or was it the Zelda games, that this feels illegal?
Metroid Prime 4, we said, Alex said, or Metroid Prime 4, Alex said feels illegal because it's running at like high resolution and you're playing with like a mouse. So it it feels like emulating a Switch game or a Wii game or whatever, but you're not.
Yeah, I'm scared that the Nintendo and Game Freak are like modern expectations of game performance. Interesting to consider.
It's going to be interesting when Metroid Prime 4 drops. And since we know that mice work on the Switch too, Retro, they're in Texas. Come on, guys. The key, like Switch 1 supported keyboard and technically mice, so which is why it was weird that people were making a big deal about Switch 2 supporting USB mice when the Switch 1 already did. Look, sneak it past Miyamoto. Put a keyboard and mouse mode in for Metroid Prime 4 on Switch 2. Just do it.
I need this like as like a fucking video bit of like Miyamoto looking around at the camera and whatever, and it's in the background, just left the field them. It's like a little you see some guys in the background sneaking a fucking mouse and keyboard with a Switch 2. You can't let Miyamoto find out. Don't turn around.
Can I also just point out that the key art for Pokemon ZA has a Totodile front and center on one of the trainers' back?
Yep.
Perfect.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, but that should happen in the game. If they're just doing this for the box art and there's not a Totodile that you can ride on your back in the game, then we're fucking up. Then it's like, what are we doing? You showed this at your box art. This is false advertising. I'm gonna sue.
And that's it for the news we had this week. Now that we're like nearing hour 4 of this. So a very surprisingly packed week heading into a surprisingly packed month. I'll leave it at that. We talk about that all the time. But yeah, next week, Summer Games Fest. I know you guys have your travel plans ready. You've already talked about how you have to align those with your Switch 2 plans and all that stuff. So obviously, next week it's going to be me and Mikhail and Chow potentially on this podcast, and we might see if we can rope Cullen or Scott in. But I know Cullen's going to be focused on
Scott
Switch 2
can't.
coverage. Yeah, and Scott can't either. Right? He's there too, right? So I'm not sure how next week. Next week will be an experiment. We'll put it that way. But I will be here at the very least, so you can listen to me talk. And all the news that comes out of it, we're going to be obviously rely on all of our contributors and news writers to make sure that we get it all out and up on our site and on our social all of our social channels as it's available to us. So if you made it to the end of this podcast, as always, we love you so much because we know it's a lot to listen to 3 hours every week. But if you stuck around, we do greatly appreciate it. You can follow us if you're not already on any of the social media networks. Just search for RPG Site, and you should be able to find us. Bookmark our website, rpgsite.net. If you like it, if you like what you're reading, leave a rating at the bottom or leave a comment. If you like listening to this podcast on whatever podcast service of your choice, leave a rating or leave a comment. We love to see those. If you haven't already, join the Discord, discord.gg/RPG site. James, Josh, and Adam, I hope you have a great trip to Summer Games Fest. What are you hoping to see? I guess I'll leave it at that.
Hmm.
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 I don't know what we can say we were hoping to see.
Well, I
That's
mean,
true.
I'm trying to
What
think
are you
of
looking
like
forward to most? I'll generalize the question a little bit. Like, what are you looking forward to most?
The
um
inevitable Nintendo Direct thing that's probably not going to be the same week, but the week after.
they're gonna. I'm fully expecting and hoping and definitely betting all my hopes on them finally showing off the localization of Tsukihime, the other side of Red Garden. There, 100%, it's gonna happen. You heard it here
Yeah, so
first.
that's all but guaranteed, basically.
Yes. Yep.
Where's the Steam release of Tsukihime remake?
They're also gonna announce that 100% guaranteed. Betting all my hopes and dreams on that for sure. Yeah. Hey, I think you can reach out to these two guys I know for next week's podcast. Their names are Jeff Keighley and Hideo Kojima. You can reach out to them for next week's Tetracast. They might be available.
Let me write that down.
Okay.
Brian's getting scanned for Death Stranding 3.
Is it
then.
Jeff with a J or a G?
Why does he spell his name wrong?
Yeah, I know. It's
I don't know.
crazy.
Okay, we know that Capcom is going to be at Summer Game Fest. Like they teased that with a bunch of other publishers, and we were thinking maybe it's going to be Onimusha, but I bet we're going to see Deep Down come back.
Ooh.
Yeah. It
there we
was
go.
a real game. It was playable at one point.
I think the website's still up. The official website for Deep Down is still up, or at least last time I checked, it was.
But that's it for this episode of the Tetracast. So obviously have a good trip. We'll see you when you get back. For everyone else, stay safe, take care, and I will be here next week. We'll talk to you later.